Good evening, everybody.
Oh.
Good evening. Diana Malloy, calling the Falmouth Board of Health meeting to order. It is August 15th, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. The first agenda item is opening remarks and public comments. First off, I just want to ask if anyone's streaming, recording, and I know, can you just state your name for the record, please?
Eileen Preston, FCTV.
FCTV, Nikki. And Scott's recording for the minutes. Is there anyone else streaming, recording? Yes?
Gilda guys followed up.
Found any. Thank you. Okay, any comments or opening remarks from the board? Any public comments? Yes, ma'am.
Would you like me to stand?
Yes, please, if you
Hi.
could, for the record,
Sure.
state your name.
My name is Helen Kennedy, and I'm here on behalf of Frank and Michelle Shorter, who live at 60 Luke Road. And they could not be here, but I just want to comment. I was at their home last night, sitting on their deck for a cookout, and the sewage smell was so bad from the auto camp, we had to go into the house and shut the windows. And this is not the first time that has happened. And I just think it's a shame that this is impacting the quality of their life. They can't even sit out on the deck because the smell is so bad. And they also wanted to say that they've noticed that the wildlife and the ducks and all the birds are gone from the marsh. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am?
Olga McElroy, Precinct 1. Reading the report of the Selectmen's meeting, I assume Mr. McGann was either misquoted or misunderstood, assuring the Selectmen that the changes in the marsh were not a result of auto camp. Since prominent scientist Maureen Conti sent a letter being very specific about changes since the auto camp opened, that she has seen after 25 years of monitoring that marsh, why is her data not valid?
I'm going to ask Scott to take.
Public comment, can I still comment?
Yeah, well, why don't we hold off until we get into the agenda item, how's that? Okay, so we won't comment on that, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I have a public comment or a remark. I am changing my primary residence to Bourne, Massachusetts as of the middle of this month. And at the advice of town council, I can continue to serve my term. I couldn't be appointed, but I can continue to serve my term. Thank you. Okay, first agenda item is 836 Palmer Ave, continued from several meetings. Hearing to discuss and deliberate whether to allow continued use of the septic system. And I am remiss, I'm sorry, I'm going to read our mission statement. Just hang on one second. The mission of the Falmouth Board of Health is to protect and promote the health, safety, and well-being of residents and visitors of the town of Falmouth. The primary functions of the Board of Health to achieve our mission are to prevent and control disease, enforce state and local regulations, promulgate local health regulations, identify and protect from environmental hazards, and advocate for a healthy community. Scott?
So my original comment was referring to the beach failures, that we do have, historically, we have beach failures, and my comment was more about whether a beach passed or failed as a result of the auto camp. Primarily Chappie Beach, which I would agree that Chappie Beach would fail, with the situation here at auto camp. So it was I wasn't commenting on the condition of the marsh or the science behind the marsh. It was more of a comment about past, present failures at beaches.
But
So
in
my
general-
comment was that Saconaset Hills had failed in the past, Wood Neck, and there's a history of beaches passing and failing, and environmental conditions, tide, rain, things of that nature, temperature, are all factors in it. So that was my comment to the town manager. I don't think I was commenting on, Ms. Conti's science or not. My comments were based on looking at this historical data of pass and fails on the beaches, which you all can get from the state's website. You can go back 20 years or so on the beaches and get the results each week from beaches too. So if you want that website, I can send a link.
But the beaches aren't the only issue here, and perhaps the marsh is a more critical issue than the beaches.
Understood, but I was just answering your question regarding to my conversation with Peter, with the town manager. My comment was beach related, the beach failure.
And you see no correlation
Well, I
between
didn't
the
say
marsh
that.
changes and the beach.
I didn't say that, I don't know. My comments were about the beach failures, because that's more in my purview is the beach beaches, because we regulate the town beaches.
Sir, in the back of the room, if you could state your name for the record, please.
Me?
Who have you had your hand up?
I did, yeah.
Yep.
Well, my name's David Hudson. I was just wondering whether or not, or how this past summer, this current summer has compared to the last several. Have there been more beach closings, less, about the same?
I would say Buzzards Bay, if you include Megansett and Chappie, I'd say it was more, that week was a heavy week for failures, that particular week. I would say, taking out that week, it was probably relatively normal. We had one fail this past week, that was Falmouth Yacht Club. Okay, that one failed. We didn't have any failures in Buzzards Bay that particular week, but I can guarantee you, when was that thunderstorm, Tuesday? If we had tested Wednesday morning, we would've had a lot more failures. That was a very heavy rain. And actually, in the state form, when I have to submit a state form every time there's a failure, it does have me check off whether there was a rain event, because that does tend to throw it off. So we had one failure this past week, that was, like I said, that would be a south-facing beach. We didn't have any failures this week in the Buzzards Bay. We had a very bad week, that test week, we had 5 or so fail.
But like Woodneck?
Woodneck's had that once. Woodneck fails probably more than any other saltwater beach that we have, historically.
Because of the
Well, anytime you have a marsh in the back, you have wildlife, you have organic matter, things get washed into a salt marsh, which gets washed off onto a beach. If you test it on an outcoming tide where all that water is being sucked out, you have a strong southwest wind, it keeps the water close to the beach. The sampling cup is no bigger than my cell phone, so you're trying to make judgments on a sample that's taken once a week. And so usually the beaches, like I said, we had 5 beaches exceed that day, 3 had to close because they failed their second one. Or there's also a thing called, the mean, or where there's another way of calculating it out that the county lab does. Would I say that week was high? That was a very high week, yes. As it leveled off, we'll see. I mean, we've got a few more weeks of testing to go. Last week was a good week for Buzzards Bay, at least the time at which they tested. Go ahead.
Does this summer seem to be worse than previous, or sort of along?
I would say
the
for
same
Buzzards Bay, it was a bad week, so yeah, if you had it all in that week, yes. We also had unique conditions too. It was really hot, the water temperature inside the bay is higher, bacteria grow better. Now, if Auto Camp was ponding on the ground, running into directly like an outfall pipe into the marsh, then yes. But I mean, everything's going in the ground right now at Auto Camp, and I just didn't see the relation to Chappie Beach or Little Island at that distance when the effluent was not ponding on the ground. And even if it was ponding on the ground, that's quite a stretch to make it to Chappie Beach, in my opinion. So I'm giving you what my opinion is. I'm not trying to protect anybody. I don't have a stake in that. I'm just giving you my opinion that beaches generally fail. Woodneck and Saconesset Hills, which are right next to each other, each on the other side, does tend to fail more. I would say the south-facing beaches without salt marshes tend not to fail as often, okay? And the beaches, like I said, Chappie on occasion, and Old Silver on occasion, Megansett on occasion, not often. But Woodneck would be the one that would fail the most often. For whatever reason, the salt marsh is bigger, closer. It just is. And historically, I can give you the website. I tried to do a report before it started. The state site's not on, but didn't give me the ability. I tried a couple different places, computers to get on there. But if you want that website, it gives you the historical data on all the tests.
Sure.
The bacterial load in the average test during that week was high. So even though there's a pass-fail, the average, the failures were high failures as opposed to right at the line failures that past week. Ask me if whether my opinion that's got to do with Auto Camp, I would say no, because Auto Camp septic, at least since the board's gotten involved, has been going in the ground like everybody else's.
Half. The rest is being pumped off site.
Right, now, but I'm saying that the septic is not going on the ground, running down into a catch basin, out a drain somewhere. I am out there, we were out there Friday afternoon was the last time I was out there. I take drives into the parking lot all the time, I'm not seeing it, ponding. That's a whole different issue, it's going in the ground. Bacteria don't travel very far, I think George is somewhere like 5 feet or so. So bacteria gets caught up in the soil. The issue's primarily been with nitrogen levels, which will have the long-term effect on coastal invaders and so forth. but it's specific to E. coli, or we use enterococci as our testing method. It does better in salt water, so the state uses that as their means of detecting E. coli. Doesn't travel very far in the ground, in soil, from effluent. And so I didn't see the relationship. Also, Woodneck had that single week failure, you'd start to see a lot more of it. And that was my opinion, and I still believe that. Now, whether AutoCamp is hurting from a nitrogen standpoint and the marshes and so forth is a separate issue. I was specifically talking about the beaches, which we do regulate in the health department.
Thank you, Scott. Sir, for the
Hi.
record, state your name, please.
Derek McDonald, I live at 38 Place Road, close to the shoulders. I also have smelled the odor. And what I'd like to know is, where in the marsh are the weekly tests taken? Are any samples being taken in the upper marsh? And secondly, can you tell me that there's no leak from either the tank or the connections to the main tank, which is at the lowest point?
Anyone from, Mr. Bracken, anybody want to answer that for him as far as where it's being tested? Whoever can answer that.
The only thing I can say, Kev might be able to add to it, because his firm was involved with the inspections, but they were inspected at the time they were installed and tested for water tightness, so at that point, they were water tight, which is a requirement.
At the tank level. Scott?
I have not seen any ponding on the ground, so if anything's happening, it would be subsurface. Again, subsurface would still have the bacteria. Going bacteria, not nitrogen, two separate issues. I've not been out there and seen ponding or runoff of anything of that nature at the times at which I've been there.
Go ahead.
Smith with Whitewater, as far as the sample locations, the influent sample is at the entrance to the system at the pretreatment tank, and the effluent samples that we're monitoring are from the final effluent clear well before it doses up to the leaching field. So those are the two primary sampling locations. We don't specifically sample anything in the marsh within the confines of the treatment system,
Right.
at the inlet and the outlet pipe before it goes to the leaching field.
Right. Could I suggest, and I'll even volunteer, to take samples out of the upper estuary?
Okay, so, can I answer?
Sure can.
The problem with that is, what's our baseline? Just thinking out loud is, what was it before AutoCamp came? That number you don't have. So if you find a number that you don't like, do we have enough data on previous? Like, you're gonna need, I'm just curious about the data and who sampled it and so forth.
Ma'am?
Yeah, I'm
For the
Linda
record, state your
Linda
name.
Thomas, 86 Loop Road on the marsh. I'm a little concerned that we're not testing the marsh, and I know what you're saying about a baseline, but you still, as a health person and environmentalist and so on, you would have some data to go against if the marsh is being impacted at all, wouldn't you? I mean, we don't want to wait for 20 years from now and look at the marsh and say, oh, well, we should have done something.
Typically, in the health department, we don't get involved with that part of the environmental sampling. It's not something the health department typically does. Not to say that we can't, if the board wants me to do whatever they want me to do. It's not, we normally don't do sampling of marshes and saltwater water bodies or freshwater bodies, other than cyanobacteria in fresh water and beach testing for beach safety. But that, I'm just telling you what we've historically done. We haven't been historically checking Sipwith Marsh or other bodies of water for that particular quality, other than for swimming purposes, which is what we do.
But how do we know if the marsh is being impacted in this point? We don't. Okay.
So, the water quality committee for the town, is there any data that they would have regarding the marshes? But that, again, it's not, you see, the public health piece is, we're kind of,
But even if we privately had the marsh tested or whatever, I mean, it seems to me, and I may be totally off, but we're sitting here going, well, we don't know if the marsh is being impacted or not, and that's out of our hands, we test the beach, and at the end of the day,
there's lots of marshes as well, but I'm gonna let
well,
Scott
I
respond
know
to
there
it.
are,
I mean,
you're
you know,
responsible
this-
for the whole town, and I understand that completely.
And
George has it.
George?
Sure. I'd like to see if we could bring a focus to the operation of the system, but just to put it in perspective, that since the Board of Health has been involved, and in particular the past month now, when we've discovered that there was a failed leach field and we're restricting the flow to 2,500 gallons out the leach field, I'd like to just sort of put that in some sort of perspective. I think that Scott had tried to do this before, but 2,500 gallons would be roughly the discharge from 20 houses. If the discharge is 20 from those same 20 houses was treated to any level beyond their septic level. Right now, I'm gonna imagine anybody who's got a house in that watershed has a septic system, and they probably use somewhere around 110 gallons a day if you got 2 to 3 people in the house. The concentration of nitrogen coming out of those tanks is probably somewhere around 60 to 70. And what we've seen so far with the 2,500 gallon discharge, the level is probably 1/3 of that. So it's 1/3 of the impact of 20 houses on the marsh for at least the past 3 to 4 months. Before that, there was some violations. That's what we caught, and we're in the process of correcting it. What we'd like to hear tonight is how those are corrected. As far as its impact on the entire marsh, think about the number of houses in that same watershed. Think about the number of houses that are not on any treatment right now. And whatever you think about the auto camp being a good neighbor with the odors or with any other of the things, I can't speak to that. I can speak to what I see the loading of this system now as we're watching it, as we'll continue to watch it. And it will be at maximum flow and the maximum treatment, probably somewhere around 20 to 30 houses. That if the property had developed, it certainly could have had a fewer houses in there, a good number of houses in there. But we're really not here tonight to try to figure out whether it has an impact on the marsh or not. Everybody's house has an impact, let's face it, folks, we all flush that toilet. What we're trying to do is maximize the performance of the system in accordance with the permit, and we need to hear tonight how that's going to be totally achieved. Until it's totally achieved, we've reduced the flow to that about 1/4 what the permitted flow is, just about 1/4. And we're holding the feet to the fire to get the best performance we can, which is right where we want it to be. And it won't go up to any further design flow. They're hauling approximately half their wastewater out of the site right now. They'll continue to do that. And if you recall, if you've been here in past meetings, you've seen that Ben Van Boy has motioned that should they not prove to a certain extent the treatment by the end of the month, then they'll be hauling all of the wastewater off site while they're putting in a new denitrification unit or an additional component to achieve better treatment. So if you'll permit, I mean, we'll listen to you all night because we work for you, but we'd really like to focus on how that treatment system is coming up to speed or not coming up to speed, and what would be the schedule for it to do so.
And George, just to add to, I think you mentioned the 2,500 gallons, and it's half, one of the fields is not functioning.
Correct.
And that is shut down, and so that 2,500 gallons is coming from what would have been going into that field, is that correct?
Yes, and I observed the records this Friday. I went over there to talk to the operator, looked at the records, looked at what they'd done since the last meeting as far as their discharge. Got a handle on how they are managing that waste, how they're getting it pumped, the frequency at which they're getting pumped. And we have all the records of the health department.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am?
Hi, I'm Maureen Conti. I live in Sipawissett. I submitted the letter previously considering the 20 years worth of coalition, Buzzards Bay Coalition Baywatchers data that we have, and that's state certified data, just for the record. We haven't seen that problem before in 20 years. AutoCamp's the only difference. But my question is really related to the soil absorption system. And my understanding is that the leach field that has been shut off right now was improperly backfilled with materials that they shouldn't have been. And the question is the leach field that's operating right now backfilled with the proper materials according to the permit?
Scott?
You wanna answer that, Don? You did. You
I
guys
can
wanna-
answer.
Can't hear you.
Don Bracken, Bracken Engineering. From that, after that last meeting, we did go and inspect the field that was working. And again, we found a lot of crush pipes due to the improper backfilling. But if you recall, the field that's working was still properly vented, and the system depends on getting oxygen for it to function. And so while we were there, the pumps kicked on, the field was dosed, and we continued to camera. All the effluent dissipated. By the time we were done with the cameras, the field was dry again. So we're very confident that field is functioning properly. And it's great to have the comparison because now we're very confident on why the other field failed, is because the first thing we looked at were the vents, and the vents were filled with water, so the system wasn't getting any air. So that we submitted a plan last week that we hope to have reviewed and approved this week, so we could get started next week on it to completely uncover the fields, replace all the pipes, or take out the pipes that are damaged, and so forth. And we plan on having somebody there continuously during the operation when they're doing this work.
But the follow-on question is, the proper functioning of the soil absorption system is critical, the backfill that's used, and it has to be the permitted backfill. And my question is, if it hasn't been tested, then why are we assured that one field was perfectly fine and the other was not?
Scott, you wanna take that?
Both were inspected equally. I would say Field B was in much worse shape. They made similar mistakes in Field A, but not enough that it stopped its ability to leach. That would be how I would categorize it. The same issues occur in both fields. They backfilled with, you guys all live out there, the boulders, the rocks, should have been cleaner material all the way up to where they loaned it. And so the same issues occur, but because the vents didn't dip and the distribution boxes were better, it's, as they said, they ran cameras, I was there and watched the camera. It's able to absorb the leaching field, the effluent into the leaching field. Now, 3 years from now, I would say it'd probably be an issue, but, we're talking about its replacement in whatever time the board has. But there was camera, and I was there. So, yeah, the field, the one that's closest to the entrance is Field B, the one in the back's A. The one in the back A, they cameraed with a high definition camera the whole thing through. It's just in better shape, but not.
It needs to be repaired, but it's.
And if you're gonna be out there, you might as well do both, because the other one's gonna have issues as time progresses. They shortened the life of it, but they didn't kill it. That's the best way I can put it.
So I think we'll move on to, we've received a timeline for repair or replacement of both fields. And maybe we can go through that. We've also received in our packet the request for the construction of the system, and so we'll have somebody describe that, what's going to happen. Okay. As far as the timeline, leach field B repairs, I don't know if anybody from the board has any comments. I was kind of wondering myself between 8:30 and 9:30, what's gonna be happening in that time frame. That's my question. Because it doesn't look like a lot. That's if I didn't understand it correctly, System B signed off.
I'd be happy to explain
Thank
that.
you.
So, the first phase is to uncover the entire system. And the way the system is designed is to pipe 6 inches of sand above the system, and on top of that is a structural fabric, very heavy fabric. So we're anticipating we can take off all the fill down to the fabric, take off the fabric, without damaging it as much as possible. We have the 6 inches of sand cushion. either by hand or light machinery, uncover all the pipes. We're gonna take out all the pipes and inspect the pipes to see if any of them can be reused, or if they can't, we're just gonna replace all the piping. We plan on having a representative from Presby, the manufacturer of the system, trying to get them on the site so they can confirm the conditions of the pipes if we're gonna reuse any. If we can't, we'll just replace all the pipes. And then, this is within this time period, and the pipes, the sand will be cleaned out. We don't expect the sand to be contaminated because the way the system works has layers, and we're hoping all the biomat is within the pipe system itself. So once they're taken out, we'll probably have to bring in more system sand, put the pipes back in, cover it with sand again, and then put this new heavy-duty fabric over it. I'm sure we're not gonna be able to save the old heavy-duty fabric. And then we put we have a plan that we submitted as part of the application describing most of this work. After we put the new fabric over it, we have specified the fill material to go back over the system and to be compacted adequately in 6-inch lifts. And then, once that is done, then the parking lot will be replaced. So that's, we're hoping it gets done sooner than that, but it's a large system and it's a lot of work.
Wasn't that all done in the first place?
Scott?
So this permit's just for the fields, you're gonna be pulling a separate permit for the additional IA technology?
Yes, that's gonna be a
That's
separate
a separate
permit.
permit.
Yep.
And I do have one question.
Yep, Scott?
Who's gonna install
Yeah,
it?
can we have the order,
Right,
please?
yep.
Thank you.
Who's gonna install this?
So far Hamilton, that did the initial installation,
Wow.
is going to be
Okay,
installed.
so, if you want me to issue him a permit, cause I'm not so inclined. If it's through the board, you can issue it, I mean, I get it, I just, I want the board to do it, not me,
Mhm.
issue him a permit.
Sir, I'm gonna continue to let us describe what's happening, so then if we still have the same questions that you have, hold on to that, please, but we need to get an idea of where we're at here, okay? George?
Like, since you're going back to the same installer that didn't quite install it right, are there conditions or something that has transpired with the installer? Did they sort of hire new operators, how are they committed to doing it better than they did it the first time?
I haven't heard back from them, anything specific like changing the operators or whoever the supervisor was gonna be. That's why I mentioned, we're gonna have our own staff on site,
Okay.
to monitor it, and I
So
would
they'll
assume-
be on site for the entire reinstallation, so other than the ripping it out, I suppose?
Correct. I mean, there may be points where we don't have to be there the entire day, depending on what they're doing, but we'll be there at every stage.
Scott?
I think if you're permit, that should be a condition on the permit.
Yeah. Scott, you issue the permit, and whatever you're comfortable with is what they need to do.
Well, that would make me comfortable. I'm not so inclined to give a second shot for something that's this big, but if you're going to be there watching the backfill and stuff, and we'll be, if we could be there daily,
Mhm.
we got other things to do, we're good to do.
Kevin Klein from Stantec. To answer your next question for the treatment system, it's not Hamilton Building. That will be Pride Environmental. Pride did the piping, but not the tank installations and stuff from the first one. They're gonna be doing all of this one.
Thank you. Okay, so again, between, there's like that month time frame, and I'm not clear that I heard what's gonna happen in that month, 'cause we needed to move forward,
That's the month
right?
of construction.
That is, building inspections are required, and then system complete and signed off, so, between 8:30 and 9:30 is when the construction is gonna be? Because I'm reading 8:30, 9:22, place soil back over, so then that's when it's gonna be functional, 9:30.
Correct, that's when,
Okay.
yeah, 9:30.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then we're moving on to Leachfield A as of 10/3, October 3rd, right? And that's the one that's functioning. Any members of the board have any questions as far as the timeline for that?
I just, if I could just remind you folks that, the last meeting or the previous meeting, there was a condition that is ending at the end of this month for the 29th, which states the performance must meet a certain level for 8 consecutive readings. We haven't seen any laboratory reports, but we have seen all your field testing. That would be contingent upon seeing laboratory reports that met that criteria. And then on the 29th, I believe, is when that clock stops. So past that date, there shall be no discharge from the site other than that which is pumped away, or the auto camp has a choice, of course, of just stopping business. But as we move toward that date, the board is going to insist on a contract from a pumper and a commitment to be there. I know you had a pretty close call very recently, and that worries me that, pumpers are great and they're reliable, but I'm sure they don't wanna tie up their truck every day, and it looks as though if there's no water going through that system, you're gonna be pumping nearly every day, if not every day. So we'll need to see a commitment from a pumper that says that they will be on standby every day. If you cannot meet the criteria past the 29th, either that or a commitment from the auto camp that they will no longer be operating or accepting guests after that date. So you can continue. I just wanted to remind you of some past actions of the board that have some implication to where we're going at this point.
And that will be our next meeting is the 29th. So decisions made, and we would need, again, all the 8 consecutive,
Certified lab reports.
there you go. Thanks, George. Okay, then moving on to A, and that should be all completed by February 6th and operational. And then we can go back to the, I take that, I'm sorry, here's A.
November 9th.
November 9th, thank you. And then the Infodrome, we're looking at beginning with Pride Environmental, for equipment lead times and planning on 8/2 started, and we are now at 8/15, so design plans for A and reconfigured recycle. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble following the timeline for the Infodrome. Is that all?
Let me see if I can help. We're in
thank
the
you.
process of looking at the design plans right now. When we gave you the original design, we had a phase 2 that had an Infodrome
Correct.
plus and another clear well. Because of the strength of the waste, we are looking, and between F.R. Mahoney and myself and Eric Smith from Whitewater, we're looking at upsizing the Infodrome plus, upsizing the clear well, and we are also looking at seeing if there's any modifications that need to be made to the Infodrome to see if we can get another foot of media.
The reactor vessel itself.
Reactor vessel itself. See if we can get another foot of media in. Just because of, our flows are real low, but our load is high, our strength is high. We've got influent nitrogen above, well above 100, sometimes 200 or 300 milligrams per liter. And we're discharging right now, our effluent is in the 20 range. And we're removing more than 70% of what's coming in, but we are not getting to 12 yet. So we're looking at increasing the size of the Infodrome, increasing the media if we can in the Infodrome reactor, increasing the size of what we have at the Infodrome plus, increasing the clear well, adding one other recycle line for the Infodrome plus, just so it's not a single pass, we can do it as multiple. Looking at shifting the new tanks to the west. We just got the new survey. That involves also redoing the roads, so we make sure we don't have any drainage coming over the system. But we'd like to shift it a little bit to the west so it's not between them. And then we're also looking at adding a stilling well that will be between the collection pipe and the water main. And what that will do is allow us, when we do our returns and our recycles, essentially it's a 2,500 gallon tank. So we come in at 300 gallons a minute, and instead of returning that at 300 gallons a minute, it'll come into the stilling well, drop to the bottom. The outlet of the stilling well will have an 8-inch pipe that goes up to the inlet. It goes inside, this is the design we're leaning towards. It'll come to the bottom, have a T, but on the T, so it'll be an 8-inch pipe out, on the T at the bottom, it's gonna have a 2-inch pipe. So the water is gonna come in at 300 gallons a minute, and it's just gonna have a short 2-inch. It'll go out to 2-inch at about 50 gallons a minute. And that will then return to a new spot on the anoxic reactor, so that we can essentially disconnect it from the collection system. And by doing that, because it's a 2-inch pipe, you can clean it through the 8-inch, but if it ever clogs, it's just gonna overflow and go down the 8-inch anyhow. So it's not gonna be able to, it won't back it up or do anything, and then the operator can clean it if it's doing that. So we're trying to fit all of that into this. The other thing we are looking to add is an odor control system. We wanna be able to pull the air off of, we add air to the amphitrome reactor. We wanna pull all that air off. When you recycle at, right now it's 300 gallons a minute for the backwash, but it'll be slower, but that displaces air in the anoxic. We're gonna pull off of that too. And same thing with, we'll take a look at each of the clear wells, pulling off of those. That odor control system, it'll have a fan, it'll be activated carbon. We're looking at putting it up, one spot is right on top of the amphitrome reactor. There's a big concrete pad. If not there, it'll go next to it on the pad. But it's gonna go up high up there so we can suck everything from up there. And that
You're
will go-
already going to increase the height of that reactor, correct?
What was that?
You're already going to increase the height of that reactor?
We are looking to see if we have to increase the height of the reactor, or if we can raise, if it's only 1 foot of media, we may be able to raise the backwash and leave it the same. Alternately, we take the top off, we add a 1 foot ring, or 2 foot if we wanted to.
Right.
Problem is, it's just so high. If I have to raise it a foot or two, I'm not gonna put the activated carbon on top of it, because you can't get to it. While we're doing it, we are gonna look at grading again, because it is very steep off the backside of the amphitrome reactor. If we're raising that anymore, we're looking at where if we can do some things, if we need some retaining walls. We were supposed to have one put in over by the anoxic tank, a small one. But we're gonna look at what we need to maybe step the site a couple, without making it worse than it is. And right now it's a 1-to-1 slope, but it's, we gotta see what we can do. I'm hoping we don't have to raise the amphitrome reactor. You know, we can, and that 1 foot of additional media is enough, but we have to check that. Our overall flows, they're pumping about 4,000 gallons 3 times a day, 3 times a week. And then they're discharging about 2,500 gallons a day. So if they're actually pumping 4,200, their overall flow is about 4,300 gallons a day. 2,500 to the leach field, 1,800 a day offsite. And they're doing that Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We anticipated at this time of the year it would be a lot higher than that, but it is what it is. And it's the reason for it, and part of the reason for the strength, and we're still trying to find out why it is so strong. Part of it is that all the plumbing fixtures are ultra low flow. Like the toilets, they've got, because these are campers, when you're typically going out camping, you don't wanna use water. And so a typical toilet that would have been like 1.6 gallons per flush, these are 1.1. They have 2 settings, a 1.1 and a 1.6, but it's, whether you go number 1 or number 2. But really, those are 1.1. Your typical faucet that's about 2.2, these are 1.2 gallons per minute for the bathroom sink, and 1.8 for the kitchen sink that isn't used. The shower that is typically 2.5 gallons a minute, these are 1.5. And that's the reason, that's part of the reason for the high strength. We have also looked at the products that they use. Because like a hotel, they give you a shampoo, they give you a body wash, they give you hand lotion or hand sanitizer. We found that the shampoo was really high in nitrogen, so we're looking for something else. And we couldn't understand why the shampoo was so much more than the hand wash or anything else, but it is. So we're looking at getting rid of that.
So, George?
Can I ask a little bit about, I mean, as I was there and got a good tour by the operator, how it's operated, how you're getting rid of the waste, how you're pulling waste out of there. To my understanding, you're taking what's in the clear well after they've pumped out the first tank, the anoxic tank, pumping the crap out of the anoxic tank, then running that clear well back into that anoxic tank, which gives you the storage to complete another day. Could you tell me whether you think, because certainly the first thing I was thinking about is that must create a little odor when you do that. Is there anything that can be done short-term to control the odor during those events which are creating the odor? Because it's possible that that's what's happening. I wasn't there when you were doing the recycle, but I could clearly see your clear well is looking effluent there. And I imagine your noxic tank is full of odors waiting to fly out of there, and you're giving them a good passage when you're recycling that. Is there anything you can do at that point?
I'm on site. I have that anoxic manhole cover open. That's nasty, right? I don't smell anything. Is it my nose because I'm used to it? I don't smell anything. You don't smell anything when you come out. But it was close. You're standing right on top of it. So reiterating on previous, I'll go back to the fact and state it again, I don't smell anything. The scent that they're smelling with the butters, is it some kind of a carbon source from the wash? I don't know, but it's not like I can't have it cooked out because of the wastewater treatment plant at Odor. I don't smell anything. Now, when I return the clear well water back, George, it's also doing a dilution. The perfect scenario is for me to do it when I'm there, when John is there. John pumps, I send it back. John's not there, I might have to return a second time that day, and or call and ask for some help from Auto Camp who can help me. I have to keep that manhole cover where I never had to keep it open before. I can't compromise that sanitary T when I'm returning the water back. And I also have to leave it out enough for returns / not backwashes. However, those backwashes are not happening automatically. They're being done when I'm there. When Kevin was saying that it created an odor or the air pressure from it, from the main reactor back to the anoxic, it's only, and when it does occur, it's only at 9 o'clock in the morning, not at the dinner hour, because the only time it's being done is when I'm there. I have to keep the manhole, I still don't smell anything.
Okay, so it would be your opinion that there's no operational features that occur in a regular fashion that could be corrected to take care of the odor? Okay,
No,
that's fine.
And one of the things that we, and it's something, I was at the plant Friday morning, and
Excuse me?
there were
Please.
no odors
Thank you.
Friday morning between 8 and 9 while I was there, that I could smell. I mean, standing right on top of the amphitryon reactor, you get a little bit of a musty, but really it was water coming back from, it was treated. It was not something that you smelled more than right on top of the.
Earthy, not sewage.
Yeah.
Okay, are there charcoal vents on the,
Yes.
there are charcoal vents?
There's charcoal vents on the amphitryon.
I would say I was there also quite a bit of time Friday and I didn't smell
Yeah.
it.
The only thing that I would question, and it's just because, I mean, when I look at odors on Loop Road, which is a couple hundred feet away from the treatment system, is just, we'd have to look at, is anything migrating up the sewage collection system? Because it's not at the treatment system. We're not getting, I have a very sensitive nose, and I'm not getting it there. I did not walk up to, all the way up to see if possibly it's coming up. By redoing by adding the odor control, slowing down the returns and recycle, and actively pulling off the anoxic tank, that should eliminate that, if that's what it's doing. Because when you've got auto camp site, treatment system's in the middle, there's not a house anywhere near that.
If I compromise that sanitary tape, when I do the return back manually, then it'll back up in the collection system, so I have to, and I don't.
Okay.
Is there any way, Scott, that we could kind of, I don't wanna say chase, but when we've got a complaint at the time, I mean, it's almost like minutes, so I don't know that it's realistic to try to get anybody out to see if they can track where the odor's sifting from.
You try, I mean,
You've
you know,
done-
certain days of the week, I'm the only person on
Correct.
here,
No, I
right? No,
understand.
mean, there's other things, you know,
But
so I'm
even if
the
we knew-
only health agent, we have our other one is in Africa or in
Well, because I'm thinking
So I
it
would
could be
try my
something
best
else.
to get
What
out
time?
of it every time.
What time, where, what time?
Well, this was.
So that we can then look it back,
We are
or
tracking.
we do a return.
Well, I can look at that, cause we are writing
Okay.
down, when the residents call, we are keeping track of day, time,
Because-
day. So I could look at that and pinpoint it and be out
Because
there
it
for
could
them.
be something, who knows, unrelated.
be
We don't
something-
know that, that's why I'm saying it's not, you're not seeing it, you're not feeling it, smelling it, you're not smelling it, but it's happening, so
But-
where is,
And if it is
there a-
migrating up the collection system, that's something we need to know.
Is there a farm across the street that has composting?
I
Oh.
Yeah.
So, we can't necessarily, all that, but I'd like to go back to the Infodrome development and, design schedule. And, please, with all due respect, I don't have any experience with how long it takes to sort this out as far as what's actually going to happen. We've had 2 weeks now, so there's a lot of, you're saying, we're looking at, I'd like to hear, like, when we're gonna be done with the plan.
We should have plans submitted to you for, September 16th.
Yeah.
We will have
I don't know.
schematics, we just had survey finished to come up with this. We're working on the design now and working on the sizing and, we can have schematic plans that are good enough for Pride to start ordering equipment by the end of this month. Cause we've kinda got to there, where we're looking at getting the equipment ordered. The equipment has a 10 to 14 week lead time. So we wanna get them going as soon as we know it's gonna be a 4-foot diameter reactor that's 10 feet. They can start with that, and then we'll get you finalized, stamped plans for the 16th. But we'll have what it is
It's
for
a
your next
month
meeting.
now, George, is that reasonable?
Hey, it's hard to get things, the day after tomorrow, I know that, so Scott has some.
Well, you're controlling a lot of your nitrogen by pumping it, so I'm
Right.
assuming you're gonna continue to pump it
Oh, yeah,
until that thing
it's-
gets in there, so
Yeah.
you've solved some of the nitrogen problem by hauling it. I think, I'm just asking, you're
Right.
gonna continue them to
That's
haul
continued until.
the plus comes in.
And we
Yes.
need the 8
Yeah.
consecutive at 12 milligrams per liter.
Right.
Right, I mean. So your poundage would probably be roughly the same, because you've taken 3/4 of
The poundage would be 0 after
After the
the 29th.
Right, so, yeah.
And at that point, we're not, if we don't meet 8 times, we're pumping everything. And obviously, they wanna go as quickly as they can, but they also, we wanna make sure we get it right.
And that would be until the system's in.
So,
Right.
what about lab reports? I'm surprised we haven't seen any, and I'm
still
skeptical that
do.
we'll see 8 consecutive, high-quality tests
don't have 8
for 2
consecutive yet.
weeks
It's
from
gonna, the
now.
consistency is not there, the number 2025,
Mhm.
we're real close, sometimes under, whoop, under. Consistency, sometimes way under, consistency not there, I'll let Eric, reiterate on it though,
So we've seen the field kits,
In
we
the-
haven't seen the lab reports, are they not?
The field kits that we have so far and any complete lab results, Rick had been sending over, so we've been pressing on the lab, and we will have a comprehensive update no later than Thursday of this week of everything that we have, even incomplete lab results, focusing on the total nitrogen, which usually has a shorter turnaround time. So that's what we expect to have, and we've got a significant amount of results today. There was a couple items that still required QA/QC, and by Thursday of this week, we should have a pretty comprehensive results through around 8/12.
So we'll be looking for those, because
Yes.
they will be sending them to us. Where are we at?
Well, we've heard the update.
Yep.
They're on track for, they know the limit. They know what they have to do.
Right.
And they're gonna be pumping half off-site pretty much for the foreseeable future until you get the other unit on. So I think
And
we're.
possibly all, as of the 29th.
As of the 29th, right.
And so is it, for those abutters that are concerned, it sounds like it's 9 o'clock in the morning that this is happening with the pumping and all. And certainly Scott would be glad to hear from anyone with the date and time. We're logging that, trying to anticipate or trying to figure out where else that might be coming from at this point.
Right. Well,
Yes.
how do we contact, how do you
The health-
contact Scott?
The health
The
department.
email you sent me worked, I just wasn't
Okay.
on the day you sent it, I
Okay,
had to respond
alright.
back to you.
Okay.
For the record, please, yes.
Yeah,
you can
Mary
say-
Ann Gould, 50 Elizabeth Road. I just wanted to ask you, how come we don't have any labs? I mean, every time I come to this meeting, it's the same story, that the labs aren't here, and if they are, again, today, we don't have any labs to go by, why is that? I mean, that's unacceptable.
We have daily labs.
We have
Yeah, but
daily
from
field
this
But the
team-
full spreadsheet, yeah, I
Yeah,
think the last one
that
was
goes-
July that you sent, it was mid-July.
Yep.
Yeah.
It goes out to a lab, and as, at the last meeting, you were describing to us the
Right.
challenge of the timeliness, and, but yet they're the top-notch lab too, so.
Generally, there's like a 10-day turnaround
Yeah.
on business days.
But that's
Business days.
unacceptable for the board to allow them to continue to, allow Odor-Camp to function without having labs that we are having, that we can see, that we know that they're in compliance, they're not in compliance, and we are just allowing them to be continuing to receive guests.
George, do you want to take that, or Kevin?
Yeah, we're not. We have required them already weeks ago to begin pumping material coming out of the septic system before it enters the environment. So they have minimal release of volume to the environment. We know the degree to which they're treating it, which is a high level of treatment, because we have field test kits daily. We're getting those reports, field tests. What we're asking for are the laboratory analyses, which have yet more data. And those are delayed. I am also frustrated with that delay, but we have put in fail-safes to protect the environment and health, which are removing the material before it gets into the environment. And by the end of this month, if they haven't reached compliance with treatment, then they won't be releasing any material into the environment. It will all be pumped out. So those are our measures to handle the fact that it's not at compliance.
Are we using the best lab possible? I mean, could we go to a different lab that presents the, the result quicker?
Does seem to be the best lab to go to, and it's not up to the Board of Health to determine where they're gonna send their.
We did
It
discuss
needs to
that
be
at
a
the last
certified
meeting,
laboratory.
but it needs to be a certified lab, so there's very few options. So, I don't think that, there's anything that AutoCamp can do at this point about getting them in, except that we need 8 consecutive ones by the 29th, so that's gotta happen.
And if they are not meeting that, are there any repercussions?
They'll be pumping everything off-site, they'll be pumped.
But you'll keep the occupancy rate the same, you're not changing anything yet?
Yeah, the occupancy for the wastewater purposes is 0. The wastewater dumped into the septic system is 0.
'Cause
So
everything
if there's
will be
people there or
pumped
not,
off-site.
it's not really relevant. What's relevant is that there's no effluent going in after the 29th if they don't meet 8 consecutive. Their discharge will be 0 after.
Into the ground.
If they don't meet 8 consecutive with good readings.
They will have to have everything pumped off-site. to be
Okay, so
traveled.
are we gonna get the labs by the 29th of August?
That's what they have to do, or they're gonna have to pump everything off-site. They need 8 consecutive good numbers in order to continue the Field A functioning. And the 29th, if Field A doesn't have 8 consecutive good numbers, okay, they need to begin all of it to go off-site. That was a decision made a couple meetings ago, and the gentleman in the back has his hand up, and then you can be next, sir.
I assume this whole system was like thoroughly inspected and passed inspection when it was completed 2 years ago or whatever it was, correct?
The installation was, thank you, Scott.
So Bracken was the site engineer, correct? And then we would do inspections as they were called for prior to backfilling. However, the biggest problem was backfilling, and normally health departments out there aren't there for the backfilling. So if I was doing your septic, we would see it final, we would see it open, and then we would pass it. We're not there to witness the backfilling process on any septic
So
system.
this is all happening because of the substandard backfilling?
Yep.
The vast majority of it.
Boulders, all kinds of things, crushing pipes, which no one
In
was
terms of,
really aware of.
in terms of its functionality, the denitrification would be a separate issue, and not meeting it, it's got nothing to do with the installation. Okay, what's got to do with the installation is the backfilling process.
And when it was inspected, there was no way you could actually see what was backfilled?
I can tell you that my
Like
inspector
color or something?
remembers telling them to make sure they clean backfilled with clean Title V sand, and that wasn't done. That was one of the issues.
So
that
are they
caused it.
paying any kind of a price for that, other than you having to redo it?
Well, that's what, they are gonna redo it.
Well, right, but is there, like, fines or anything, or is it just they're
I don't know.
redoing it and that's the punishment?
Well, I mean, that's not up to me.
Yeah, we haven't gotten there, we wanna see it resolved and fixed. But it also is also the company that was utilized for the backfill. I imagine Auto Camp's not too thrilled with what happened
Right,
there.
yeah, sure,
So
that-
you have to understand that piece as well.
Huge expense for them.
And anything just, okay, sir?
It just seems to me that Auto Camp's been extremely successful in stall tactics that have let them go through the summer season, their most prosperous summer season. And I know the Board of Health is not responsible for a lot of the grievances that the neighbors that are here have. But this is the only forum that those neighbors can air their grievances to Auto Camp Management. Is anyone here representing Auto Camp Management?
That would be me, right here.
That would be you?
Yep.
That would be
Yes,
you,
what's
that
your
would be
position
you.
at Auto Camp?
I'm one of the entity owners.
Okay. You're
And your
a
name
stockholder.
for the record,
yes.
sir?
My name is Brad Guidi with Blue Flag Partners.
Thank you.
Okay. But it seems to me that the neighbors are concerned, and the Board of Health has a concern about the health of the neighbors and but not the prosperity of Auto Camp. And Auto Camp has been permitted to be prosperous all this lucrative summer season without any penalty, it seems to me, other than a $10,000 fine, which I'm sure your company sees as peanuts. And they continue to be able to be open. And I don't know if there can be another forum where somebody from Auto Camp Management, not the consultants as such, can hear what the neighbors want to say. And every corporation that I've ever been affiliated with has a mission to be decent with their neighbors and the community in which they have the pleasure of doing business. And I'm not seeing that here. I'm seeing stall tactics.
So just so you know, what we required to have pumped off, half of this, et cetera, was very calculated amongst the board members. George and Kevin have extreme experience, as does Scott, with all of this stuff. So that decision did not come lightly, but it certainly was a needed decision until that we can get back in compliance and make sure that things are functioning. So that happened weeks ago. So maybe the penalty is, I have no idea what it's costing to just pump 3 times a week, but it's not cheap, and it needed to happen.
It's a cost of doing business.
It's a cost of doing business, and so they have done what we've asked them to do from that perspective. So that is limiting the effluent into the ground, and again, as George tried to describe, what we're talking about is about 6 homes, if you wanted to calculate that all, right? About
A
the
number of
same
homes.
number of homes.
But if I might, through the
Thank you,
chair,
George.
I
We're
think,
not having
you
a
know,
Board of Health until it's resolved.
the Board of Health isn't really about punishing or really, recriminating or trying to levy very high fines or anything. The Board of Health is about bringing about compliance. And yeah, the $10,000 fine to, I guess you might call that minimal to a large corporation. But their act of coming back into compliance is now going to shift some resources toward what is appropriate, which is the fixing of an environmental problem that they have on site and gaining compliance. And that's what the board is for. They don't particularly punish. No, it does take a long time. So the mission of the Board of Health in that regard is, as they're taking that time, which we've decided pretty much tonight is a pretty appropriate schedule, given everything that, could they have done it on day one? Should they have thrown a whole lot more into it? Should they have gotten a better contractor? To us, that's water over the dam. We now have to move them toward compliance. And what it's costing them, if you want to consider that punishment, I just consider it the cost of compliance. And we hope they get there soon, because if they don't, unfortunately, their business will likely be impacted in one way or another by either shutting down or pumping everything off-site.
So just to give you some sense, our goal of getting people in compliance, it goes from everything. We've had pools, stables, restaurants. I mean, there's all kinds of things that our goal is to get people into compliance to meet the regulation. And that's where we're here, is to get compliance. And if there's no compliance, then there are issues. There is obviously things that need to happen. And, unfortunately, they're not alone. We've dealt with several companies that we need to get back in compliance, if you will.
But this is not a criticism.
No, I'm
of you
not taking
folks
it that way. I'm just
who
trying to.
volunteer your services,
No.
much to our credit,
Yeah.
much to our benefit. It's how AutoCamp has strung you along.
Well,
That's the feeling I have.
I'll let you speak in a minute, but we work with all kinds of people, and again, our goal is to get compliance, and sometimes we have to make the rule, and we are the ones that have to say what has to happen in order to get there, and it's just what we do every 2 weeks, and in between. So, sir, you had your hand up in the back again.
Yeah, look, I know there's a lot of upset people here. It goes without saying, and trust me, we didn't set out to build a system that doesn't work. We invested over $1 million in putting this amphidrome system in. It was never our goal. We hired what we thought was a great contractor to install the system and do it the right way. When we found out a few months ago that we were out of compliance, we immediately got rid of the operator we had, and we brought in Whitewater, who have been excellent. Unfortunately, you can't make a system like this, and I am not an expert in this, but one thing I know is you can't make a system like this come into compliance overnight. It does take time. They've been there every day or every week treating the sewage, trying to get this thing into compliance. It's now clear to us that I don't believe we're going to be able to get under this nitrate level goal. So now we're working with Stantec, the original engineers, to design a system that will. We are not only going to use the Amphidrome Plus, which is what was originally agreed on, but to what Kevin said earlier, we're trying to go above and beyond. We are not bad people. We are genuinely trying to do the right thing here. These are complicated systems. We never set out to build a system that didn't work. This is a nightmare for all of us. So please, I am happy, to your point, to meet with people if you want to talk about other things, but these are complicated things. And we're throwing all our resources at making this right. So.
Sir, for the record, just state your name, please.
Ray Ruddy, Sackanessa Hills. My job for over 30 years has been providing services to government. I've testified in front of numerous boards, dozens of boards, legislative committees, et cetera, over that time period. When George says our job is not to punish, I agree with that. It should not be to punish. On the other hand, your job is to make sure that they're in compliance with that, okay? And part of that compliance is, there's a carrot and a stick, and it is entirely appropriate, I think, for the board to say, if you don't fulfill this plan, for example, we'll have a meaningful penalty, of $100,000 a week or whatever is appropriate. So, I mean, when you go in and inspect restaurants, I'm certain you say, as other health departments have said, you have to correct this by next week, and my inspectors are gonna come back in next week, and if it's not corrected, you're gonna be shut down. And those restaurants know that. That certainly is, I think, the appropriate position for the board to take to apply penalties if things are not met. So we're not getting lab data, okay, We're not getting lab data. There should be a penalty for getting the appropriate data that you want. So this board does surprise me in their leniency in that matter.
Sir?
I'm Derek McDonald again. I'm a little concerned that neighbors like the Shorters are still experiencing the odor when we're pumping half of the stuff off-site. What would happen if we pumped all of it off-site until they came into compliance, until they got the
Well, that's what,
supercheck?
August 29th, that will be the deadline for making sure if they're not in compliance.
Why wait till the 29th?
Because then it is like there's 0 people there. So then it's not a factor until they can get things in order.
I don't know, I can speak for.
Just,
Nobody
we
seems
established
to
a
agree
deadline
that's-
previously, 2 meetings
Mhm.
ago, we established a deadline. That is the deadline, we're not gonna suddenly change it now. It's the next meeting will be the meeting at which we will see if they've met what we required. If they haven't, then the repercussions are that they need to pump all of the sewage off of the site. We don't want to shut down the system entirely because these systems need inputs in order to develop the microbial mass and populations in order to process the nutrients and give you the effluent that you need. So pumping off-site is a better solution until they can reach performance from the septic system.
So to be clear, as of August 29th, if they don't meet the parameters that you guys are requesting, then everything gets pumped off?
Correct. Correct, that's 2 weeks from tonight. Okay. Yes, ma'am?
This is Linda Thomas again. Are they still operating at full capacity when this is all going on?
But you have to understand, it's being pumped off-site.
Well, I know, I'm just wondering, I would,
Well,
because,
the board limited their wastewater flow. It's irrelevant how many people are there if you've limited them to 2,500
Okay.
gallons. That's what they used, gallons instead of occupancy.
Correct.
Because we're, yeah.
thank you.
Okay. So is there anything else with the timeline?
And that
Do we have
occupancy
any
somewhere around
questions?
20 trailers worth of 30 trailers worth.
Okay.
Any questions with anything at this point in time?
25
Okay, we'll be here on the 29th, and we're gonna move on to our next agenda item. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
And if you wanna have conversation, if you can please, unfortunately, we have to continue our meeting, so if you can take it either outside or for way down the hall, because that goes back in here. Thank you. The next agenda item. Okay, if you can kind of keep moving so we can get on to our next agenda item, please, and conversations way down. Can we have the conversations way down or? All right. Our next agenda item is 84 Municus Road, local upgrade approval request continued from August 1st. Scott, he's gonna have to take it out, please. Thank you.
This is Moreland, different stamp. Correct. Same plan you got in your packet.
Okay.
But there was no change on it, it's just a different stamp. Okay, thank you. Hi. And for the record, can Nikki, can you see him? So she can hear your name, please? And I don't know if you can stand maybe to this side so she can hear, well, when she's back. But the tape's going in the meantime. Thank you. Okay? So,
My name is Tom, I'm a civil engineer, and last meeting, I had a little bit of the soil starter system was football radius.
right?
Reconfigured the system, used different chambers. I instead of using those big 500-gallon leach gallows, we use smaller LC6 chambers, and it's now an L-shaped configuration, and the whole system is outside the 100-foot well radius per your request. That's the change.
Is there still a variance? Is there any variance on that?
Well, there would be 2 lot line variances, which they would just need the green card. Did you give the green card?
I submitted to you my affidavit along with a copy of the
What you sent.
other notices that were sent to everybody.
Yeah, we have that.
Thank you. Okay, great. Do we have any further questions for this then? It's all within, yay. Okay. Scott, any comments from the audience?
From the 2 property owners.
60?
Yeah, it's 5, 8, and 6 from the lot line. Street being one I can grant in-house, but the one would be the lot line to the south.
Okay, is he a butter here, or he's been notified, he or she has been notified?
Okay.
And it's your opinion that you can construct, maintain, and operate the system from property only under the control of the applicant, correct?
Get everything in there.
That would be part of the record, please. And a motion to approve the variance for 84 Municus Road, Falmouth, with the standard set of conditions.
Second.
Any further discussion?
I would only add finding that the applicant has removed the need for the variance from the water well, from the potable well, excuse me.
Any further discussion, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Appreciate your work.
All right, thanks.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
We're gonna see that over there.
Explain to grade.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
The
the
next
letter, yes.
agenda item is 267 Clinton Ave, the Tides Motel, an update on the progress of permitting to install the previously approved septic system. Is anybody here from the Tides? Who's gonna speak tonight?
I think it's both Diane and myself. Currently.
Can you just state your name for the record, sorry?
Christian Andre.
Thank you.
Currently, we're working with Wiggins and Acme Precast. Historically, we've done a lot of work with Wiggins in the past, but they're having a hard time with the ballast, the additional ballast on the tank, and they're worried about getting it to us without it either being damaged, and with the additional width, they're worried about, details and getting it over the road to us. So we've been working with Acme, and I'd say within a day or two, we're gonna be able to pull the trigger with
Right.
Acme to move forward with them. We have all our pumps with EJP, and it's all on order and due in well before we're gonna start. The UV light as well with Norco. JR Sales, we have the contract signed with them and the service agreement. SCC Shoring, which is South Coast Creations, they're gonna take care of shoring along the road. We work a lot with Baxter Crane. I need to get a little more of a detailed timeline for them when I need them to come in. They need 2 to 3 week lead time before I can go ahead and pull the trigger and say exactly what date we need them there, so we kind of need to get going a little further before we can say we have what the actual date. Rain for Rent is all set to go for October 3rd, when we plan on starting. Concom, we're all set with conservation, we're approved. Lockwood has been on site, they've done their test pits. They are going to wait till August 31st to apply with the new regulations, because that's when they're gonna be released.
These are the discharge regulations
Yes.
for the dewatering?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yep. We're working with the power company to kind of just precautionary measures to be able to shut the power off to the 2 poles that are going across the parking lot just in case. So we're working with them. Ideally, we'd like to put them underground, but that's a conversation for another day. And then with the water shut off with the water department, we just need to make sure we do that prior to driving any sheets, because their biggest concern was us damaging their line while driving.
Okay. Is that anybody else? All good?
Do they want to know what you pumped from there?
As far as the pumping records, we have those.
Well, we would like to hear about those. How are we doing? And how
I have a
often?
copy for everybody, do you guys wanna, it's a spreadsheet of what he just told you, everything, and then the pump records, do you want one?
Great. Yep. Got it. Thank you.
Seth, is that your only copy? Thank you.
Yeah.
Then they have that, then you can. So we're having Seth take copies as well, so they both have records. Seth is a GM.
So
Okay.
I just printed it, I put everything on there as the exact gallons, as per the each dump ticket. All the paperwork just goes in contact with the quotes and the contracts that they have going. The yearly contract for the fast systems in there signed too as well.
All right. And Diane, could you just state your name for Nikki for the
Yeah.
record, please?
I'm Diane Brassey.
George?
I just have a couple of questions. You flew through that, thank you very much. You got Acme gonna be doing the tanks. You're all set to dewater JR sales for the unit itself. So the only thing missing really is the permit for discharge,
Correct.
and that you're gonna apply for on October 31st when the regulations come into play?
No, it's August 31st, and
August 31st.
we'll have the results from the test by the end of the week this week.
Okay.
And we can, share the results, but we're not gonna, Lockwood does not wanna apply for the permit until the new regs come out, so that, it's.
Sure.
So in the meantime, and so the anticipated date of finishing this project is,
The anticipated start date is October 3rd.
okay, do we have an anticipated finish date?
2 days.
Scott?
Shouldn't take you more than
Yeah.
2 days.
I was gonna say a day and a half.
Okay,
No, I mean, realistically, we're thinking a month.
I think a month too, I would agree with that.
So, Seth Thomas, General Manager.
Thank
I'd
you.
just like to talk about the start date. I know this is a very sticky subject, however, please take into consideration of the employees that I have brought on board for this current season, and the livelihood that this kind of will impact. If we have to close down, say, September 11th, that's at least 5, 6, 7 weeks of no paycheck for these individuals, whether it's housekeeping, front desk, and even our recreation staff. And even if it's a 3 or 4 week sort of close date, a little bit later, say maybe October 3rd or something like that, that would be, I don't know, that would be very helpful. And I would greatly appreciate that.
The short side is you're asking to keep open till October 3rd, start no construction activities until that date.
That's what I'm
Okay.
looking for, October 3rd, after Columbus Day weekend. And again, get with the livelihood of the housekeeping staff, those ladies and gentlemen work very hard to get this property up and running. It's very hard to staff, rehire, everything like that. Everything kind of just takes a big impact, when it comes to staffing and seeing them gone for the, closing.
with all due respect, we're a year behind with this project, so we're lucky it opened at all. We were able to come up with a plan.
Yes.
So that there was no discharge into the ground. So I respect
I mean,
their
I-
position, but Yeah, I don't,
It's 20 individuals, ladies and gentlemen, that work locally here, that are being impacted, you know? And it's
So-
not that, you know,
I
it's,
think we all understand and respect it, so George, or Kevin, what is the impact to the public health? Is there any? Since it's a tight tank and we're pumping everything off, does it make a difference? And definitely don't wanna be sitting here next spring with an open date that's delayed because there's things that
No.
didn't. Yeah, well,
To speak-
we're a year
Yeah, no,
behind,
no.
so you just don't, it's like,
I'd like to at least speak to the October 3rd date. We're working in unison with Grassy. They had a pre-planned trip, I wanna say, I don't know what the date is.
Like, yeah, September, the eighth,
So-
and I'm not
so-
changing.
So I couldn't convince them to change that, unfortunately, but so the only reason for the start date being October is because we're working with them. We're not gonna start something without John on site, he's gonna run the site, so I can't begin without him, and that's the only reason why.
George, you're thinking.
Well, I'll tell you, I was the original one that said don't let them open at all, but I meant.
Well, we opened with no discharge into the
That's
ground,
right,
so
we did.
that's,
We opened with no
that's.
discharge.
Yeah.
I'm wishing that I had our original motion in front of me. I don't remember exactly what the timeline was here and what it was we told them. Sorry.
Okay. I would say that since they have demonstrated compliance with all the pumping, we have all the records, they have a clear schedule, which we didn't have before. We had something on the back of a piece of paper, and we had the engineer telling us how he couldn't do this or he couldn't do that, which I gotta tell you frankly, didn't do anything for me.
We've got a
what's-
conservation committee approval as well, which is another issue that was holding things up.
What's been presented so far has shown total compliance and willingness to go, and I think 1 month isn't gonna make a big difference, as long as it's pumped
As long
off-site.
as it's pumped.
Makes sense to me. Yeah.
all right.
Diane?
And through this month and a half that we've done, we've not had any ponding, everything's been pumped before it's even gotten to the tops of the covers, so.
But then again, we have been encouraged to punish,
Punish and fine, so, okay.
Thank you.
Scott?
I guess the question is, did you actually give them a deadline in the last vote, where you have to do a vote today?
I think we did. I think we gave them the end of the season, and the end of the
Right.
season it was sometime in September, I think.
I think at that point, we'll have to go back to our,
We have to vote to extend.
or we'll have to
Yeah.
vote to extend, cause there was a date. Do you remember when it was?
No,
What
but
was
maybe
it?
it doesn't matter.
What was-
It's
well,
Monday.
it just gives
Monday,
us a-
yeah, so it was Monday, we were closed on Monday, so you gave us a weekend, and it was the second weekend, so that's what, September 11th?
Yeah.
So I'm just looking at my.
Just so for our sake of, otherwise we have to take the time and go look it up.
Yeah, so it
if
was
you have
Monday,
it helps
September
because
11th, so we were
September
shut
11th.
down the 12th.
You were shutting down the 12th, and now you're not shutting down the 12th?
You don't want to shut down the 12th. We
Yeah,
don't know
we-
that until a vote is made.
No, what I'm saying is he was planning to shut down.
Correct.
You were planning to close operations anyway, September 12th.
Not in,
No.
no, just because, from the last hearing,
Okay,
we were.
all right, sorry.
So we would
Thank
be
you.
asking for a 1-month extension
Okay.
on the
All right.
tight tanks.
So that's the request.
Maybe better to put a date on it. What's
Yeah.
the date?
September,
10th.
or October 3rd?
October
So they
3rd.
want a 10-3. As a begin date, so we close then and then take them out from 10-3 to 11.
I'll make a motion to.
Hey, can I just, sorry,
Okay.
before you say that, Seth, what was your date that you were looking at?
I was looking at October, Columbus Day weekend. but
Which is not the
that's-
3rd.
but, yeah,
That's
so-
later than that.
But,
The 3rd is when we could get all the suppliers, that's when so a couple of suppliers were a certain date, so we all said, all right, here, go ahead.
Do you know when Columbus Day is?
Well, I'm just gonna make a suggestion, in this days and age climate, getting all those parts in on a deadline of the 3rd, you may be missing some, just.
Right,
End of the month,
right.
something like that.
October
No,
31st?
I'm just, you guys do what you want, I'm just saying, like, if they're all supposed to be due on
Right,
the 3rd.
right, and then you gotta give and take because this one says it's gonna be, and then
Right now, our biggest outlier, just to be clear, is just Acme and Wiggins, and that's just because of the ballast of the tanks and getting them on site. If we proceed,
Too heavy.
yeah, if we proceed with Wiggins, I'm going to have to manipulate the tanks on site myself, which I don't want to do.
Right.
So.
That's why we're going with Acme.
Exactly, well, yeah, so essentially, our longest lead time is just the structures, the tanks, and then we're.
Let's just, the end of the month, I would say to be
October
safe.
10th is actually the Columbus Day.
Mhm.
So you were planning to shut down operations anyway after the 10th.
If we could,
Yes.
yes, if we could have
Yeah, that would be
I think
best.
Seth and everyone would be very happy, yes.
That'd be better for me.
Oh,
Alright, so the
So
10th.
the 10th is a
on-
Monday,
Okay.
that's,
And then
I'll
you would
make-
potentially start the install on the Tuesday the 12th, because Monday's the holiday, you guys.
Oh, that's right.
okay.
I'll make a motion to extend the approval to operate at the Tides Motel until October 12th, 2022, provided that all sewage effluent is pumped off of site continuously until that date.
I'll second.
Okay, is there any further discussion or questions? Tom, George?
And I second by choking out.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys, thank you.
Good luck.
Okay, the next agenda item is a housing item, 30 Heritage Circle. Scott's gonna present, failure to comply with an order of the Board of Health. Property owners were ordered to remove cats and clean up property.
So we received complaints, I think as far back, an odor complaint as far back as late last year. We received a couple of them in the spring, especially as it got warm. I believe it was you, sir, that I was talking to quite a bit. I spoke with the homeowner who's here, Steve's here, in April, and he assured me that you're currently working on it. After I didn't see a lot of activity in April and so forth, I issued orders to correct formally as opposed to the conversation that Steve and I had. Since those were issued in June, I've been speaking quite regularly with Animal Control and MSPCA. And what was originally thought to be 20 or so cats is quite a bit more. As it's been sort of progressing, I've been putting more heat on the MSPCA and Animal Control, but come to find out they've rehomed somewhere around 50 cats. And it's been difficult to continue, there's only so many places you can put them. So there was a dumpster on site several weeks ago, but the dumpster really wasn't filled up. And so we're sort of in this meandering. Now, I've got new information as of today. Saturday, as long as the house is, I did not declare it unfit for human habitation at this point, which will really help the situation because, Steve, I don't know what's coming out Saturday, I'm trying to remember. They just had the national.
No, it was Sunday.
Sunday they're coming out?
Was Chuck from Environmental?
No, I mean, this upcoming Saturday, there's a crew coming in to get rid of the last remaining cats. And the name of the company is like the, what's the big one out of the state, the federal one? Animal welfare nonprofit. It just escaped me. I had it memorized today. Chuck had just talked to me. today.
Association for the.
It's not an
Cruelty to
ASPCA,
animals?
they're not talking about cruelty, it's more of, it'll come to me as soon as I hang up. They're coming Saturday, they're gonna get rid of the rest of the cats, okay? Then what I need from the board is, we need real quick action, there's a new dumpster in there. Cleaning up the place and continually to clean the place up with 50 cats, there's somewhere around 70 or 75 cats there total. Is gonna be difficult, we need the cats out and therefore then clean. And
Right.
so all the soft materials, the carpet needs to be ripped out. The soft items like couches and beds and things of that, curtains, things like that, they're all stained with urine, because there's a heavy urine odor, especially as you get closer to the property. So that needs to be done very quickly, and without having any conversation with Steve or response from my original orders in June, I put it on the agenda. So I've learned a lot since I put it on the agenda, because I've had several conversations with Chuck Martinson, that this upcoming weekend, the rest of the cats will be removed. And I need a short lead time for the cleanup, because the residents have been dealing with it way too long. And so we need the cleanup to occur really quick once the cats are out. because then you're not gonna have new problems. Like, if you had cleaned it up in August, but we still had 37
Right.
cats there, it's gonna just come out and smell again. So, like, so what I need, and Steve, you can speak if you feel like it, if
Yeah.
I'm not saying this correctly, let me know. But this is how this happened, so I need, what I need is from the board, short orders in order to clean up the rest of the issues that are there, which is primarily on the inside.
Who's gonna be cleaning
Well,
the
that'd be
inside?
a conversation that we should have with Steve.
I'm sorry, I thought there was already an order. to
I've
clean.
ordered them, and we're here for non-compliance with the order of the Board of Health. They did not comply with my June 9th orders, and that's why I've got them in here now. It's
And
been,
the
some of
owner
that delay,
is?
most of the delay is on the end of the owner. Some of it more recently is the volume of cats that we were unaware of once.
Well, we
got
don't
into-
call those tenants. Who owns the property?
Steve owns the property.
Steve,
Yeah.
You own the property?
My wife and I, yes.
Okay.
Just for the record,
Are
state
there
your name.
tenants
My
on
name
the
is, my
property?
name is Stephen Palumbo.
No,
Thank
it's
you.
not occupied right now, George.
No.
Okay,
That's the-
unoccupied.
We haven't lived in
Unoccupied
there.
with cat, it is occupied still with cats, and the
Just that.
last of the cats are supposed to be leaving on Saturday. Is that right?
That's,
I'm
That's
sorry,
my
I just need
understanding.
a little bit more clarification.
Okay, let me-
here. The cats just moved in and.
No, so they, correct me if I'm wrong, but your wife was going in there and taking care of the cats.
Oh, okay.
Without anybody living there.
Okay,
But and then that's where it sort of evolved over to, I don't know when that all started. I got involved by the residents sometime, my first time on the site was around April. And then I went out and I spoke with Steve, and then when he didn't correct it, then I issued the orders and we're here. Now, the more recent delay is, obviously, it's more of an issue. We've got Brewster for Cats, People for Cats, MSPCA, have taken as many cats as they have, and we have that other outfit coming this week.
okay.
I wish
I get the picture, but there has been a failure to obey an order of Board of Health.
Right. Yes.
Which the board needs to act on, whether that should result in a fine or whatever. Then there should not need to be a new order, since you have a standing order that has not been obeyed. So really, the action should be to continue, with the order's been given, has been, the fine should be issued for the
Per
time
day.
that you've spent, trying to work this out. And an appropriate timetable to bring the property in compliance should be determined.
Yeah, I'd like to have that determined tonight, for the cleanup period. In terms of the fine, I think the most important thing is I don't want the fine, if you choose to fine, to affect the ability because we need to have a conversation of who's gonna do the cleanup, because it's pretty extensive. I don't wanna preclude I'd rather the cleanup done quicker. I think the residents would agree, would rather have the cleanup done quicker than the fined person. So, like,
Okay,
that's
get the
where
date the fine will take place if it doesn't be cleaned.
That's what I'm
cleaned up by
hoping, is to
that date.
retroactively have a cleanup with a fine at the end, the carrot, so to speak, right? But I really want his effort and his money to go into a cleanup of some sort of a cleanup
Absolutely,
company.
I agree.
Do we, Mr. Palumbo, is there any discussions you've had with any cleanup companies about what
I've had a
this would
couple of
entail?
conversations with Servpro,
Yeah.
and, there's another company, I can't think of what it was. They mostly don't do that, they do mold and flood damage. So that kind of put me at a hard time there. I don't know if it's relevant or not, but, this all stemmed from last year. My wife had surgery, she was in the hospital for a while. She got out, and the B&A was gonna visit, well, we had the cats there. So my daughter offered for her to stay at the house, her house. So my wife was staying there. I was still at the house. Then in June, I had a heart attack. I had a quadruple bypass. So I was out of work for 2 months. I was at my daughter's for the B&A then. And at that time, either I was going over feeding them daily and water, or my wife was, when I was sick, then she was doing it. And I'm sure it must be, I know some neighbors have seen me there every day. And we have a dumpster there right now, it came Friday. We spent all weekend over there, and my wife was there today too, because I was at my part-time job today. But we've made a valiant effort at cleaning that. The rug's gone, the cushions from the sofas are gone, stuff like that. So we are filling that dumpster up, and those aren't cheap, they're like $500 for a dumpster. And the one we had before that, they only had it in the yard for 3 days, so we couldn't fill it.
So what would be left after the cats leave?
Yep.
To finish cleaning up? What else are you requiring? The couch?
Well, I mean, we need to start with the soft stuff.
Yeah.
But if it's been extensive, you may end up having to rip the subfloor out because the subfloor is stained with it. I don't know until you rip that floor out, how much more extensive we need to get. But what I needed to bring it on the agenda is we have not been communicating about this since April. And I need, we could have worked this out, maybe being more proactive on your end.
Yep.
So, I mean, we have done, if you've been sitting in the audience, we know we deal with a lot of different stuff. So now I bring it here for some more of a fine point on it, right? So, I need it moved. I mean, the neighbors have been dealing with it way too long, and so I don't know the extent. So, I mean, I don't know, I think you get rid of, maybe have it in series. Have me inspect it within X days that the board chooses, after you've removed all what I call the soft stuff. The soft stuff, the carpet, let's evaluate it after that.
Yep.
I'll go in and evaluate it with you, and we'll make a determination if there further action needs to happen. I just don't know what that's gonna be at this point.
The board should be reminded that if we choose not to fine, we need some findings here, because we've set precedents for all of this being an order of the Board of Health. So if we decide not to do that, if we just decide to levy a conditional fine, not because the order is not completed by a certain date, which we could decide tonight, but we need to do something because there's been people before us with housing complaints, neighbors complain. We have a pretty set course of action. How much time have you spent? Give us the time, $100 an hour, that was fine. That's how we've set them in the past. So if we don't do that this time, then there has to be a finding of hardship, there has to be some sort of finding. But there also has to be an end date with a continuing fine should this not be complied with. Otherwise, we'll be back here again. And, I can appreciate the difficulty you're going through here, but we have to appreciate the difficulty of what your neighbors are going through. And it's established now. I mean, it's probably not harborage for vermin because the cats are probably taking care of that. But once the cats are cleared out, that doesn't end the problem. So I would say, how long will you have the dumpster in the yard? I mean, you can have it up to a month, I think, depending on who you use.
I'd have to find out from my wife how long this one's there. It's not a total 40-yarder. I think this one's a 20.
20 short, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's.
You should
So
be able to
probably
fill
5
it
feet
in the
high.
afternoon.
So what's your plan for filling it?
That's what we've been doing.
You're doing it yourself?
They're trying to.
My wife and myself.
We're
Okay.
trying to come up with a reasonable date.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's a reasonable date to have all of the soft material, as Scott put it, removed from the house secured and or, something done to bring it up to code, but certainly secured so the cats can't get back in there, and that it doesn't represent a harborage for any other animals or people who might wanna.
And the
sort of
dumpster
locate
removed.
it, and the dumpster removed.
When-
So
when-
what's your reasonable date for that? What would be the time frame
Well,
that you would say that would be?
They're
done?
available to come Saturday and take the remainder of the cats out.
Yep, and then
Because
what?
the remainder of the cats that are there right now are not what I consider friendly. You can't pet them.
That's correct.
They scatter when you go in.
But, so they're gonna be gone Saturday?
They're feral cats.
Feral
Yeah,
cats.
they're feral cats, they're gonna be gone Saturday.
Yep.
So what happens after Saturday?
We're back to cleaning them, just like we have been doing.
So I think what we're gonna need is a reasonable date from which all of that will be completed, that being the removal of the soft material, the securance of the property, and so it can't be occupied again by any other animals or vermin. So what's your reasonable date?
I would say the end of the month, and I call Scott and do an inspection.
September 1st.
Is somebody in the audience?
Well, we haven't made a motion yet.
Yeah, we're just still
And usually
discussing.
we'd make a motion to be open for discussion, then I'd take comments from that.
Yeah.
So I'll make a motion to continue this order with a fine to recoup all of Scott's time should it not be completed by September 2nd, that all soft materials in the house that have been stained and affected by the edibles be removed, that the house be secured from any entrance of people and or animals, and that's what I'm saying, by September 2nd, and the dumpster to be removed. That's my motion.
I'll second it. I just want you to know, Mr. Palumbo, usually we'd be fining right now.
I understand.
And that's what I wrote on my notes before coming in here, starting a fine back 2 weeks ago. So every day, typically a fine will accrue for significant amounts of money, $100, $200 a day. So Scott's time is valuable. He's spending a lot of time trying to connect with you to get you to do what it is you need to do to protect yourself from a fine.
Yep.
So I think you should communicate routinely and quickly with Scott and manage this problem by the deadline in George's motion, or all of those fines will come to you that day.
And one of the things that we also consider is fining you today will not allow you as much funding to be able to get this cleaned up. So the goal is to get you in compliance by a certain date, and then the fines begin, because then we have no tolerance at all. You know, the fact that there was no response to Scott's orders doesn't sit well with the board and what all is trying to do. It's official, and we could have back-fined you, if you will.
Yep.
But again, at this point, we want your neighbors to be able to live there comfortably, and we want it to be able to be cleaned up and problem resolved. So that, I think, until the date that we set, I think that's what George, we're trying to describe. September 2nd. Scott?
We had a gentleman too, I don't know if that's up there first, I mean.
Did you have something?
Well, my thing would be to Steve, the fines, generally you guys go $200 a day, retroactive to when the violation, so you'd already be at a multiple $1,000 fine, that's what the board usually does. I'm a little concerned since, you know, you've had issues, you know, that's got a lot of heavy lifting. Do you have help? Can you use some of the funds that you would have been fined for to get other bodies in to do that? Because that's gonna be there's a lot of ripping stuff out, and I wanna make sure that you're gonna be able to comply with it, okay?
Yeah,
Do
well,
you
that's
have-
what I'm gonna have to hire somebody, because
And it would be worth it in order to avoid the
Because I can
fine.
tell you what I'm gonna be looking for when I go out there, there shouldn't be any odor. And if it's soaked through, if you have the particle board underlayment, that's probably gonna have to come out. And then there's a lot of sawzalls and ripping and crowbars and things like that, where I just don't want you and Sandy trying to bang that out, because September 2nd is not gonna be a realistic time frame for you to do it, if it's if it's as extensive as I think it probably is. Okay? Just ripping out the carpet and we walk away, but then I get a call down, you know, that it's smelling again when it's 90 degrees out, didn't solve the entire problem. So it's might have to be a lot more extensive than the soft stuff, and I know the order is for just the soft stuff by the 2nd, right?
Right, well, you'll do an inspection at that point and find out whether there's
So we
something
might have to-
further has to be done. But I'd like to also just introduce with that motion that the findings that we're holding off on fines should include that there have been 2 medical problems in the family, and it recognizes the hardships that might have gone along with that, which might explain some of the delay in action.
Anyone from the audience?
Yes, my name is Americo Costa, and Scott, I've spoken to you a few times. It's been going on for over a year. And you know, we can't even walk the street. The odor is so bad. I live diagonally across. I live at 37 Heritage Circle, and it's a shame. We had our daughter that was pregnant. She stopped coming to the house. She says, I can't even, you know, go out of the house without smelling it. That's how bad it is. You know, and it's not fair to the cats. Well, we're not here to we're here to discuss the odor right now. I understand. But we called it animal control. We called MSPCA in regards to the cats. They were freezing in the winter. They're all hanging out with windows open, and it was unfair. And now you see them in that heat, windows closed, and the poor cats must be, you know, it's abuse, animal abuse, totally. But I just wanted to, you know. bring my point, that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you for
It sounds
your
like
time.
that will be, problem will be resolved as of Saturday.
It's
Thank
taken
you.
a while because of the quantity. They've just filled all the,
Thank you.
shelters have all been filled, so, you know, they're trying not to euthanize, right? Obviously, they're trying to rehome them, which
Oh,
takes
I
longer
understand.
than time.
And, you know, and dumpsters, they've had 3 dumpsters there, and, you know, there were nothing going in on them. So they would pick them up, and they were empty, and they were there a good amount of times. The last one was there a week, a good week, not, you know, just there for show, I guess. But I just wanted to bring it up. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Palumbo, I just wanna make sure you understand what's been motioned and second.
Yes,
That, you know, you may have to, as Scott said, you're gonna have to hire some help, and you can't sit on this for the next few days and
Yeah.
try to figure it out. It needs to begin and be ready to be resolved, okay? Cause September 2nd is right around the corner.
I
And after
understand.
that, there will be, extensive fines. Any further discussion?
Just,
Scott?
okay, so just to be clear, after September 2nd, if you're making progress, you don't need to come back, correct?
No,
Or
it
you still
needs
want
to
them
be
back?
resolved.
I think
September
you
2nd.
Well, you said the
need-
soft stuff, that's why I just wanna make sure we'll get this clear. I'm ready.
That will result in you having to inspect
Yeah.
to see compliance, but you may also, at that point, determine something much more extensive has to happen, in which case we'll have to have them back for this hearing.
Okay, so I
And
won't
could
do,
you
I won't
do
do
an
that, I
order
won't
at
do that
that time
internally.
if
Oh, yeah.
That's what I
You
want.
do an order at that time.
Reissue another order?
Yes.
Okay, I
Reissue
can
another
do that.
order with anything that
With
remains.
detail.
Well, if I
Yeah.
issue an order and he complies with the order, you're not normally coming back. You want them back, is what I was asking.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
This-
Because we need to see the progress,
Okay.
and any order you issue is going to have a little bit more detail of it than just getting rid of the soft stuff. You will have seen the place at that point and known what other extensive work has to be
Yep.
done, if so.
Yep.
And if we're lucky, no, but who knows? I mean, the cat's being gone first will probably take care of quite a bit of it, but
But there's a lot that it gets
Okay.
absorbed. Okay. Any further discussion or questions? Yes, sir. For the
John
record, just
Kyle.
state, I'm sorry?
John Kyle, I'm a resident in the neighborhood as well. I was just concerned too about if there's any, I know the soft stuff inside is obviously priority. If there's anything exterior that might be part of the problem as well, because I'm not sure if those cats are strictly inside or if some of them, there definitely are outside cats as well.
Well, that would be part of the inspection. I did say in the original order to secure the property, I believe it does say that
Right.
in there, so.
and anything that would present a harborage for.
Yeah, so yeah, that would be part of the September 2nd inspection.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I know there's 2 windows in the breezeway that are wide open, right? So we plywood those up. It doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be aesthetic. Plywood would be fine, 2 pieces of plywood on. I haven't gotten in there, and we'll do that on the 2nd and give them another punch list after that.
Just wanna make sure there's progress in the plan.
So most likely, our next meeting after that would be September 12th. We'd have Labor Day as the 5th, and so we would be meeting, on the 12th. Okay, no further discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. The next agenda item is 23 Old Barnstable Road, failure to comply with an order for the Board of Health property owner and occupants, order to vacate an RV on the property and disconnect a sewer line. Scott?
Don't know if there's anybody here for that. Pictures speak volumes. Is anyone living there? They disconnected the line now, but it's kind of just meandering. And
So this is coming out of the
that
RV?
that was just taken by Bernie on Friday.
And that was coming out of the RV?
So we're not
So
gonna
we
do
have
that.
nobody here from there to speak to this?
No.
Okay.
So what specifically was the order other than to vacate, using that?
And disconnect.
And disconnect.
So, going back in the Wayback Machine. Adequate wastewater, so I got them under 410-300 sanitary drainage system required and plumbing connections, and also potable water. You know, they haven't you can't put a garden hose there, and then they didn't have temporary housing allowed only by the Board of Health permission.
Scott, how do you determine that it was being occupied?
Well, that was done by Bernie, so I'd have to ask him directly on that.
Okay.
But it was actively, I believe he saw the active waste, so you can see it by the puddling that was active, by its tie-in, by its
Right.
hookup. I don't know specifics, cause I did farm this one out to Bernie. And he provided you the pictures of it, but it's clearly being occupied. Zoning has also determined that. Zoning has also issued that, the zoning enforcement officer. So the zoning enforcement officer and Bernie have been working on that, and we were just not getting any response.
Okay, so the order was not to have them there. In order for that order to be proved that it has not been adhered to, we're gonna need some evidence of that following the order. Have we got anything following the
Well,
order?
Bernie was there Friday and determined that it was still occupied.
Okay.
How he got there, I'll have to find out.
And so, when you say it's, I mean, it hasn't had any conversation with anybody that's living in it, and who owns the actual property?
It's up there as Tiago Wrestling.
Yeah.
So, and we haven't heard from Tiago Wrestling at all.
And so the letter was sent certified in regular mail also?
And posted the property.
And posted the property. And he was notified of the hearing tonight?
Correct, same methods.
Okay. If there is sufficient evidence that proves that the house is occupied past the order, then we should probably issue the fine.
And the order was on,
July 5th was the date that I had noted would be a reasonable start date
Yeah.
for the,
seven-
after the
after
holiday.
and so on June 17th, but when was the order actually written?
June
June
30th.
17th, June,
Yes, let's see. Well, June 30th is when
it
Scott
was
gave
an
the order.
order
I
to
think.
to vacate, June
Yeah.
30th,
Yeah.
okay. So then,
And was the order given, was there a time frame issued in the order immediately?
Yeah, immediately.
Okay, so June 30th would be the start date. The last observation by Bernie that indicated that it was occupied was
August 12th.
August 12th. And enforcement action at all by zoning? Any?
They've kind of just done the letters. They don't really have a lot. I think that they usually use us for the hammer.
Okay, so they issued a letter, do you know when that was issued?
I didn't put it as part of this,
Okay.
yeah. But yeah, they were issued, they were working together on it. He's issued multiple letters right around the same June timeframe. If you wanna continue it, you can, I can get you that information as well.
No, I think, we just issued a fine at this point. The order wasn't obeyed, it was confirmed not obeyed in August. So, I mean, what is the fine, $200 a day?
Yep.
So,
From, the August date, you
Yeah.
think? So August 12th?
No, August
No,
12th
you-
is when we have evidence that it continued, right?
Yes, June,
July
So the
5th.
July-
the order
No,
was,
on June 17th, we did the inspection. I
Right.
ordered them to immediately vacate.
but
The
you
letter
wrote
went-
the order to vacate June 30th,
30th.
that's
30th.
on there.
Yeah, so pick a date sometime after July 5th, somewhere around there, is probably by the time they were.
So, and he had 7 days, which you didn't do anything with, so we're at,
July 7th.
6th, 7th, yeah, 7th.
Yeah, that would be good.
That's probably a good day, at $200 a day from July 7th.
And so what generally this will do is when he receives the fine notices, usually when they'll come back to the board.
Yeah,
So we expect
right.
this one to be back to the board, once they get the fine notice of the fact that they're living in the RV. That
So-
usually flushes out,
324.
Huh?
it usually
Yeah.
flushes it out.
7, 28, 29, 30,
so,
38, 39. So far, it's 40 days from July 7th. If I count July 7th, it's 40 days at $200 a day. Huh?
8,000.
As of today, but it's
Yeah.
gonna continue $200 a day.
Right.
Will
We have-
continue.
We have a stock letter, and gives them a fine
Yep.
notice and gives them an invoice, say you're currently being fined at this based on the decision.
Yep.
Here's your bill, and then normally this is usually when I'll get the phone call.
Yes.
And then we'll have them on the agenda for the next time. once
Okay,
so.
that's fine.
And if we don't get a resolution, you can always have me go to court, it just takes forever
Right.
and a day.
Well, let's see one step at a time, right?
Yep,
Okay.
that's fine. No
Is there
no pun intended.
any further discussion? Is there a motion?
I'll motion to have the agent issue a fine, based on the fact that on July 7th, the RV should have been not occupied, and is now August 15th.
So fine of $200 a day
$200 a
from
day.
July 7th. Till compliance.
Right.
Second.
He's got the stop order, so.
Yep. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, 305 Grand Ave, Terrace Gables, request to discuss semi-public pool's fence location in relation to the walkways and decks, CMR 105 CMR 435.13 Massachusetts.
So, this has been, the way it's been for a long time. You know, it's just been this way, it's built this way, there's a walkway on the other side that's ADA.
Yep.
There's no room on that side. Bernie's brought it to my attention during the inspections that there's some distance between the two, but then there's a bump out that's really sort of tight to the fence. And, you know, we had mentioned, correct me if I'm wrong, that we had spoken several times about, you know, getting it into compliance with the 48, but that's not really possible with the distance between the building, the walkway, and then the pool. So there's mechanisms in which they could work on moving the fence, but I think correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just gonna surmise for you, is it's gonna be impossible at certain points to get 48. And if they're gonna go through a lot of heavy lifting and building retaining walls and things of that nature in order to get, I'm making up a number, 36 or 42 and a half, they're still going to be technically out. So that's why he's here, not for approval, or, well, I guess we're looking for, you wanted a request for discussion.
Exactly right. By the way, my name is Harold McCartney.
Thank you, sir.
I'm the chairman of our Board of Trustees at Terrace Gables. We have, as you probably know, a 21-unit condominium up at the top of Falmouth Heights. And the reason we are here is for an informal discussion of this issue, which Mr. McGann just provided a brief narrative on. Now, to tell you exactly what the situation is up there, although our pool is classified as a semi-public pool, it's only 4 feet deep. Its services are 21 units, and they're all over 50 years of age. And the pool complies with the applicable statutes and codes dealing with the position of the fence that's around the pool at the present time. Although it was replaced, it was originally a wooden fence, and we replaced it in the same location with a vinyl fence 2 years ago. We did a considerable amount of research into the background of the situation, and I determined that the site plan was originally approved in 1989. The location of the pool was a condition of a variance that was granted by the Board of Appeals in order to obtain a site plan approval. Thereafter, a building permit was issued, a permit from the Board of Health was issued for the swimming pool. That was signed off on by both the building inspector and the Department of Health. After that occurred, the property's been inspected every year for 31 years and approved as safe. Now, initially, we thought at Terrace Gables that this might have been grandfathered, which of course is only a metaphor for vested rights, as I'm sure you all know here. And, or we thought possibly that the code provision that deals with our particular issue, which is really accessibility, not safety, may not have even been enacted at the time. As it turns out, I had to go over to the Barnstable courthouse and check it in their library, and it turns out that actually the code provision that's at issue here, which is 105 CMR 435.13, was in effect back then, and there was a comparable code provision in the building code. So it was in effect, but you know, we didn't know it could have been for one reason or other. We might have even, for all I know, gotten a variance from this board back then, but I don't think this board was even in existence. Anyway, we're here now, and as you can see, I produced a packet of records for you that are all here. From the photographs, you can see that we have a continuous walkway all around the pool, but as Mr. McGann pointed out to you, there is one particular spot where there's a bump out in the configuration of the pool, and then the fence going around it, where it'd be absolutely impossible to have a 4-foot wide ADA compliant width walkway. And the reason for that is, as Mr. McGann also pointed out, there's that on the other side of the fence, on the building side of the fence, if you will, there's a hedgerow of golden anonymous hedges, and then a 4-foot wide sidewalk, which is the sidewalk that provides access to the building. And of course, that's used by our residents, their guests, post office, other delivery people. It would be used by first responders if the need arose. And so, I mean, what really has happened here is we can't encroach on that sidewalk, and we have a violation of this sidewalk. Now, as one of the photographs shows, the width of the sidewalk in the pool area at that bump out is 14.5 inches. And you have a picture of my foot.
Yeah, holding the tape.
Holding the tape. And on the other side of the fence, there is an area of about 3 feet. But according to my contractors, the problem really arises because there is a differential elevation between the level of the pool walkway and the level of the sidewalk for the building access of about 12 inches. And in order to overcome that differential elevation and support an extended pool walkway, we have to construct a wall on a footing and then place remove the existing fence and put the new fence on in the middle of the wall, on the middle of the footing, which leaves about 18 inches of room. So when you put the post back in and put the fence in, we're still coming up short by more than a foot. So we can't comply, and we're sort of caught between a rock and a hard place. So anyway.
Can I ask Scott, and this is a kind of an elementary question, but the intent of the regulation is ADA, well, it was well before ADA.
It's not
So it was-
ADA, it's just
what
that-
safety?
Well, if you needed to come.
Access.
It's access,
Right.
it's just, yeah, so you don't have obstacles in the way while you're walking on the pool that can cause you to trip and fall.
So where-
That's the primary reason why. If you needed the shepherd's hook and the crook and all that, you need some room to manipulate and go around that way, so that's.
So that's
Again, I
that's
wasn't
what
there
it
when they
really, I
wrote-
was trying to think
I was in high
because-
school when they wrote the code, no, I
I
don't even think
know.
I was in high school.
Well, that's
So-
what
so
I
yeah.
wanted to address, the access issue.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I wanted to address. Now, first off, there's no need for access along that one side of the pool for either our unit owners or other users of the pool, because the door, the entrance door to the pool, if you're looking at that fence from inside the pool area, is on the, in the fence to the right, which would be, the south side of the property. They don't need it. They don't need it for access to the emergency telephone, which is also over there. They don't need it for access to any of the safety equipment or first aid equipment or a personal throwable flotation device. They don't need it to test the water quality. So the way we feel about it is that we truly believe that since it actually isn't needed for access, and so it's so difficult to overcome it even partially, that we would like to leave it as is. We think if we do leave it as is, it will still accomplish everything that the code is intended to accomplish. It certainly won't leave it in an unsafe condition, and we would like some direction from you on that at this point. We haven't been charged with any violations of the code. We've been trying to work with Mr. McGann on this. I'm sure he'll tell you that as soon as I found out about it, I called him up, I made an appointment, I came in and I talked to him about it. I told him we'd find out what we could do about it. I went out and hired, not hired, but I attempted a couple of contractors to tell me how we could deal with it. One of the drawings, I believe it's Exhibit 11 that you have in there, I got a price from Tavares to construct the footing and the base of the wall and the sidewalk, should we get to that point. His price for that was, I think, $23,000 or thereabouts. I had the people that put the vinyl fence in from
Eagle.
No, it wasn't Eagle, it was,
Accurate.
no, down on 28,
Oh,
Walpole.
yeah,
I'm sorry, the
that's
senior
fine.
moment there.
Yeah.
From Walpole,
Yeah.
they came down, they took a look at it. They're the ones that drew the sketch that shows the post placed in the center of a wall that's part of that exhibit. So, you know,
So
we need some help on this. That's
Yeah,
what
so-
we really need.
I think,
We have the authority to do a
yeah,
variance.
can give a variance.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, I think,
It's found in 105,
Yes.
CMR 435, and the Falmouth Health Code as well.
Because well, this is on your first page of your request here. I mean, the enforcement thereof would do manifest injustice and prove the same degree of protection.
That's exactly right. That's the legal standard that's set forth in your code.
Scott? No.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think the avenue would be a variance. The findings would relate to what he's already spoken to, which is access to all the safety equipment and function of the pool. Pool's only 4 feet deep, which, yes, you can drown in 4 feet, but it opens really access to anybody, who had to get in there, emergency personnel. They're not gonna access it from that side anyhow. By closing that up, you actually restrict access, ADA access on the other side. So I'd say all of those findings would be totally appropriate for a request of variance. I think that has to go to state, because it's a pool variance, but it has to be approved at the local level first with findings. So I would suggest we schedule a hearing for the variances that we've already heard about. I mean, and those findings are pretty straightforward. You know, I mean, if the place is, the pool is otherwise in compliance, and has been in compliance, that certainly is a finding there that would indicate that all the safety measures that we just said that they'll have access to will be maintained, and the access to the maintained, so. Seems pretty straightforward. I don't know whether the state will go for that, because they are the final arbiters of it. But
Okay, because this was not set up as a hearing, sir, we'd have to have that, request for variance for a following meeting.
So, as a side note, I'm going to pretend I'm the snake guy. The one of the problem, I don't have a problem with 30-something inches most of the length. It's that bump out,
Yeah.
it's only 12. It's almost worse to have the 12 or 14 inches
Yes.
than it is to have nothing there and have the fence go right to the bump out. So that's the one thing that the state may, like,
Yeah.
I'm thinking what you might wanna consider is just ask for a variance for the, whatever it is, 36 inches, and do something to that bump out to make it as far as you can. Don't go for the variance, if the board's fine with that, you still have the state hump.
Yeah.
And so I'm just saying, that's the one thing that is on there that I have more of the issue with, is the bump out.
So the thing I would say is you could fashion a grate go right across it. You could fashion a grate that has flush to that, you arc right over that, just a steel grate, boom. I mean,
Excuse me, I don't think that would comply with other sections of the code.
The protrusion section of the code.
Yeah,
Can you move the fence just in that bump out?
well, I mean, the answer is yes, but we couldn't achieve
48.
the 48.
48.
Yeah,
We
but
need to be near it.
Yeah,
We'd be
I
over
just-
need the variant.
Right, him and I had this,
Still
him and I
need the
talked,
variance.
him and I talked probably an hour on this.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
more of I'm a practical person, right? 46, 48, 42, it's kinda still meeting the, it's just that one lip is
Yeah.
part. I would, me personally, I'd rather see that part bumped out and be 34, 32, 30, and be equal to what the rest of it had. But that would be, that's just if I was at the state, I'm just saying maybe, if the board's okay with the way it is, that's great. I'm saying is the state may have more of an issue because of that bump out.
So you're imagining a first responder running along that
They'll be
narrow
fine. The
side
first
and
responder
then
will be
getting to a
fine.
dead end?
He's gonna jump in
Oh.
that pool for a minute, but he's
Yeah.
not even gonna go to that side.
He's not going to that.
I'm talking about somebody walking around and trying to think they can walk around it. It's actually the more risky thing, trying to walk around something that's that narrow.
Yeah.
Mr. Kroger, nobody walks around
No, it
that
doesn't.
side. They, as a practical matter, they don't do it to clean the pool, they don't do it to test the water. They
No.
look at it, that's the only thing
But
they
it's
do there.
what I'm saying is that distance is a tease. It's
Well,
got a little bit in it, that's all I'm saying.
I understand what you're saying and where you're coming from, but what I can say to you is, I've been living there for over 25 years. You know, I spend some time in the pool. None of us really spend a lot of time in the pool. And most of the time, don't go in the water, they just look at it. As a practical matter,
Yep.
you know, this is not a young crowd. Although there is one woman who does water exercises in the pool. But, you know, I really think that the state would go along with excusing compliance with this particular variance, which is not a safety issue, but an access issue, really. And I think I would feel comfortable taking a shot at the state. I really and truly would, because I feel that I mean, given the entire history of this thing, you know, the way it exists now does in fact fulfill the letter, well, not the letter, but it does fulfill the spirit of the code
Yeah.
insofar as access is concerned. And this particular section our circumstance is certainly unique from anybody else's. It won't set any precedent for anybody, given the long history of this. And by the way, I'm not so sure if we changed that thing, we wouldn't have to first go back to the planning board and have our site plan modified.
So if you're gonna look to request a variance for the next meeting, you
As
might wanna
is.
consider if the pool had to be reconstructed for any other reason, that maybe then at that point is when it would come into compliance. I mean, just suggesting that
I
maybe you
would
think
add
about that.
I would add that to the request.
Yep, all right?
Yes,
That would be a
indeed.
condition of it.
Yeah, be a condition. So, we can
You
entertain
can't
this.
restrict the access to that, right? You can't put a little barrier on each side to
Yeah, well, you
prevent,
couldn't have a protrusion into the pool.
no, not into the pool,
But could you
I
put
mean,
potted plants there to keep people out of the way?
to keep people from going all the way around that.
I think it's more dangerous for people to walk on that section than have it walk. I'd
I
rather
think
walk.
you're right, you've got the
Yeah.
tripping hazard is there. The, oh, I think I can make this, and the next step there on the
Right,
side.
they're on the side, yeah.
I mean, you could almost just label it, not a walkway. Don't walk through here.
But I think a
Well,
potted
we could
plant
post a
might be a
sign
good
that, we
heavy
could
duty.
certainly post a sign there, you know, not a walkway.
Caution,
But
curve
the,
ahead.
but a nice big pot on each side of it.
Well, we
might
could do
Do
that.
the
I
same
mean,
thing, you know, stick the
it-
sign in the pot, you know,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Realistically, nobody,
no,
I
hear you.
can tell you, nobody
teenage-
walks on
So
that
why
side
don't we
of
get
the
you
pool.
on the agenda, if you think you'll be ready, we'll
Sure.
get you on the agenda for August 29th.
That was a lot of paperwork, can I have that? back
That
for
was, that,
Alright,
You
so,
want
so
my
you broke a
copy?
record of the amount of paperwork
You
you did
did.
for one discussion item.
Well,
So I want them back for next week, so you don't have to remake
You
these.
want-
You
Well,
want the whole
Yes,
packet?
I want all that.
please
Because he
do.
doesn't
Yeah.
trust,
Let me
she
see if I
doesn't
got
trust
it.
You
that
have
we
to take
would
them
save
6
it.
weeks to
Yeah.
make it.
That's right.
That works for
Mine's
me.
in order, his is out of order, I can tell, he took pictures out of
Yeah, I
That's
did.
Kevin's, I'm
You
putting
can
Kevin's
keep
name
it
on
if
it.
you, no, you can
No.
keep it, what I'm saying is I'm not
No,
making another
just
copy.
bring 'em.
of it.
Okay,
Bring it
Madam
to the-
Chairman, all I can say is this is my debut
This is
before your
Kevin's.
board, and that's why I prepared a narrative statement, and, you know, I thought that there'd be more credibility to the request if I documented it, instead of just
Yeah.
laying any.
Well
Absolutely.
researched, we
Yeah.
appreciate you doing all that work.
Well, I appreciate the fact that you, even entertained this without, you know, I could have seen this go down a different way. You know, I could have,
Oh, you were at our
found-
last agenda,
Well,
I don't know, I'm just kidding.
I could have, you know, been denied, any direction here.
Well, we
I-
still have to vote, but if you'd like to prepare the request for a variance, we'll entertain that on August 29th.
All right,
Okay, you can get that to Scott.
uh,
You need to have it by when?
is there a form?
No, he's
I don't
taking
even
it.
know.
Well, I'll throw it.
Is there a form or is
No,
it a
I'm
letter?
keeping, we're gonna just
Right, but
reuse
does
this.
he need to send a letter to request
Send me,
a variance?
send me an email.
Send him an email
We
for
don't have a
request for
formal-
variance and what the variance needs to be.
You wanna really help yourself, just because sometimes I can be a scatterbrain, is to just give me a call next, right before the 29th to make sure you're on it.
Well,
Yeah, but the email before that, when we
Yeah.
need the documentation.
Just remind me in an
So,
email.
A request for a variance
I
and
have
what
to-
you'd like to say.
I have
is
to
the
post the
variance.
agenda Thursday before the Monday meeting.
all right.
And I have made a mistake in the past, I did last week for something.
Well,
I forget to put somebody on.
I have,
So I'd say by the 24th, if you can get him the variance request by the
by
24th.
the 24th, yes,
Yep.
ma'am.
That's Wednesday, then you post Thursday.
So you're gonna keep yours, George?
Yeah, I'll keep mine.
If you wanna keep yours, you can. Just if you're
No,
without-
that's all
Oh,
right, you
thank
can,
you.
you can have it, you can have it,
All right.
as long as you give it back for the meeting.
You don't have to
Okay,
walk
thank
up
you
the
very
long
much.
driveway with
The,
it.
the next agenda item is a COVID-19
Thank you.
update by
Thank you.
Scott,
Nice
thank
seeing
you.
You too.
Heck of a way to spend your Monday, huh?
You know what? This was really an experience. I didn't realize about all these things that you do. I mean, you know.
Well, they don't do anything, they show up at the meeting every Monday, I'm the one that does.
Scott always finds things that we haven't done before, and he brings all new things every time.
Well, you deserve a lot of credit. I can see these people on these sewer issues are pretty fired up about it.
You know, and they're concerned, obviously.
And the cats, that's quite a problem too, I guess, but anyway. Thank you.
Do you want one?
Nice
Do
to
you
you.
want one?
No, there's how many left?
No
How many
pets
are
are allowed in
left?
the building, only emotional support animals.
Oh my gosh, all right,
Have a
Scott,
nice
we've
evening.
got a COVID update.
This week was better than, last week was better than the weeks before, I mean, we're pretty much in a stable pattern with COVID. You know, so, but I look
Still
at,
there.
but I look at PCR, so the
PCR
ratio
is-
between PCR and home tests must,
Yeah.
but it's probably relatively stable, right? So if I get 50 cases, let's say it's 250 real cases. So, but it's the same, but if I go down in PCR, odds are I'm probably also going down on home equally. that's all I'm thinking.
Yeah, you think?
Well-
You don't think you're going up on home when you're going down
Well,
on PCI?
again, we had almost the exact same amount of cases for like 6 straight weeks, right, 45.
Well, we had
55,
no
right?
idea because of all the home tests.
Right, but I don't think the PCR is kind of like this, and home kits are like this, right? I'm thinking they probably do something similar in their number, that's all I'm saying. I don't know what the true case count is, I can tell you we had 25 last week.
Nobody
and 50
does.
the week before.
Right.
So, I mean, to me, I'd rather take 25 over 50, you know, in the 40s or 50s. The only thing that's changed guidance-wise is there's no need to quarantine if you're in close contact, regardless of your vaccination status. Previously, if you weren't vaccinated boosted, you were out.
Right.
For 5. So they took that out last week. CDC took it out last week, and the state, I think today when I saw it, changed it to match CDC.
Okay.
There's really nothing new in terms of guidance. There's still plenty of vaccines out there, plenty. I check, Kathy checks once a week for me through CVS, goes on VaxBinder. There's no real need or push. We're definitely gonna do our flu clinic this year.
Yep.
I don't know if they're gonna mix the doses. I've heard yes, maybe, and I heard no. I don't think they're gonna have that done for this year. The
No,
dose
but I think you
combination.
can get both of them at the same time.
Yes, so
Yeah.
we can probably do that. That would make sense to have COVID shots when we do the flu clinic.
Right.
Right, so I would say we do
2
that.
shots though, right?
Yeah, I think
Two
they're
different
separate.
shots. I don't.
Yeah,
I
they haven't been able to
heard
mix
that
it
they
yet.
mix
They
them,
haven't
yeah.
heard that yet. They were trying though, they've been trying.
Well, that would be good. You'd get better compliance, but definitely at least offer them at the same time.
So we just keep doing what we're doing. We're yellow, we remain yellow. We're, you know, just above yellow because of we're 10.4 per 100,000 of a hospitalization rate, so you have to be below 10. So we're hovering right just above, just into the yellow. Been like that for a few weeks. So it's really the similar pattern. I would say there's a boatload of COVID around. It's not really, you know, blasting the hospitals because we're vax boosted, that type of things. And it's all BA5. No, I don't know what the next flavor of the month's gonna be. The BA5s took over pretty quick like the rest of them. I don't see this going away. I think we'll end up having more cases when we all go indoors. If you look at the orange for the high, yellow for moderate, and green, if you look at the map, the heat map, so to speak, for the country, the southeast has got the higher doses. Well, this is their
They're
winter.
indoor side,
They're indoor.
right.
Trust me, I was in Florida a couple of weeks ago.
Everyone's
Didn't
indoors.
get below like 96.7. I don't know how anybody lives down there.
Well, they're also back in school in a lot of
And they get back into
places.
school, but so they're, you know, in our winter, I could see a scenario where it would easily be orange at some point in time during the winter. Which, you know, again, we're not blasting out the hospitals, and we're not all, you know, having to use makeshift hospitals and things like that. I don't think, unless there's a variant that comes out that's, you know, we'll label that one Diana. You know, whatever that's gonna be
Wish.
called, you know, whatever that variant comes, as long as it sticks down the Omicron line, you know, and as they retool the vaccine this fall, it'll be more of an Omicron base. You know, I think, you know, this is our reality.
Yeah.
Right? I think everybody would agree with that.
Yeah. It's not going away. All right, sound
Not much
good?
to add about that.
Any questions? Moving on.
And I still do the FCTV every other week.
Every other week.
Yeah, I'm forced to do that every other week. I did it Friday. I update the website. Sorry, I forgot to email it to you guys. I think I forgot to email it to you guys for the weekend.
Thank you.
I was out
Thank you.
last week.
Discussion next is, working session on the current stable bylaw. I think at this point, is it not that, you know, into September, we wanna set up a hearing? I mean, a public forum?
No, well, you can do a public forum.
Yeah.
It's gotta go to town meeting.
No, that's right. No,
So
that's
we're
the one.
planning
So
on-
we did,
we're not gonna
didn't
get
we
it for this
send to
year.
town council? It's
It's not gonna get done. I mean, town council's still gonna get back to us about the solid waste. And
Right, she's
what I'm saying
almost
is I may
done.
not be able to pull off getting it ready for town meeting by then. Quite frankly. I
Well,
don't have
but
enough
if,
time
what
in the
was
day
the,
right now
but
to
isn't
pull
the town meeting, our goal was to see if they could.
Give us permission. Let me read
yeah.
through that.
That's what we want town council to look at, getting on for the town meeting, not necessarily
Right.
the actual regs. We'd like them to withdraw the current stable bylaw and give us
Yeah,
permission.
so the difference in this is there's an existing bylaw.
Correct, so it has to be withdrawn, which is what we'd like her to kind of prepare to do, not necessarily accept these, right? That was the goal.
Sounds right, yeah.
And then it doesn't need to be on the agenda again until we have some resolve to whether or
Well,
not she.
right, so it decides, okay, because you're done with it, you don't wanna review it anymore.
Not at this
Well,
point,
I did
because
send it
if we
to-
get if we get the authority, then what we'll do
Doesn't
at
matter,
that
we'll
point is
rehear
do
it
a
and retake the
public
comment.
forum,
Gotcha,
and then
gotcha,
we'll
gotcha.
add to it. There's no sense keep
That makes sense.
reiterating that 85 versions that we've done. All right, are we good with that one? And then where are we with the local septic regs? Did we wanna wait for Ben?
I think we need a full board for that.
I think we do too.
Yeah.
So, we'll see if we have, all four of us.
I'll leave it off the next, these both off the next meeting then.
Yeah,
Is he
and then
not
go
back
into
yet?
September.
I just keep it on in case you
He's-
wanna talk about it.
I think he'll be back for the 29th. My understanding was he was gone through the 22nd. But at this point, we've got quite a bit going on the 29th. And so we might as well,
What's the 29th?
well, they're gonna know whether
These guys
those
will be
8
back.
consecutive that'll
But
be a
it won't
meeting.
necessarily be that big deal.
Well, maybe it won't because it's
August
just.
29th?
No,
yeah.
they're not hitting that, so.
Yeah.
No, so they just
Right.
gotta have a
When's our
plan
meeting?
for
We don't have a.
the
August
29th. We have a meeting on the 29th, 2 weeks from today.
So we could talk about the septic regulation.
No, we could.
Dates then.
I'll keep, you want me to just keep, I'll keep stack, keep.
Yeah,
leave on
take
stable,
the stable off, keep the septic on.
Okay.
All right, and then, the next agenda item is just the
Minutes.
minutes from the last meeting. There were a couple of things. Plus I didn't write them down.
I don't think on Bob Ament's comments that he made the comment that Main Street is a sensitive area. I remember that he said the Board of Health is limited on this issue, the role of the Board of Health.
Was that from listening to the recording?
I always listen to it, yeah.
You must have said it.
He must have said it's a sensitive area.
I feel like he did.
My hands are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Making a concession, perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So, okay, sorry, I was back on, the auto camp.
Yeah,
On
me too.
page 4, where are you? Are you before that, Kevin?
Yeah.
All right, where are you? What page?
Page 2,
Okay.
right in the middle, it's the one that starts with Mr. Hoyfelder.
Yep,
Did you say despite parking inconveniences?
yep. Yes.
Okay, wow, okay.
We don't care about parking, we need it resolved, right? I mean, I
Yeah,
think that was the
right.
intent of George's statement there.
Okay.
I-
And then, sorry,
go
at the
ahead.
bottom of that page,
Yeah,
Mr. Klein explained the design showed that the amphidraome, however, the permit was given was just for phase 1. That, we actually did permit a plus, didn't we? Originally, that was the whole point. We permitted a plus, but there was a choice to not
Whether
include
to
it.
do it or not,
Right, so that was not up to them.
right.
Is that correct?
well, we
Well,
didn't require it.
We wouldn't require it, but we would have said, given the permit for it, and said if it needs to be installed, to install it.
We certainly didn't give them a permit that restricted them from
Oh,
doing
no.
that, right? Which just seems like that's, the way that's worded seems to say that, doesn't it? The permit was,
I brought up the fact that they had technology that they had discussed, because I was having, it's been spending, Don Bracken and I have been spending lots of time together at the auto camper, so, he had mentioned that there was some extra, the plus was an option.
Yeah.
And I think it was discussed, but it wasn't part of the motion of how.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up at the meeting, cause
Me
that's what
too.
fleshed it out.
and it seems like what they need. All right, maybe it's, I don't know, does anybody else think that?
Well, I don't think they brought it up in the meeting, but they were planning on doing it. That's what I was talking to Don, so I figured it should be.
But your statement is that the way it's worded It showed the Amphitrite and the Amphitrite Plus, however, the permit was given for just phase one.
Seems to indicate
Seems
that.
to imply that we sanctioned that and required only phase one or
Right,
something,
and that's
restricted
kind of, we
somehow.
did, right? We didn't require the.
We didn't require, but we
Yeah.
also, it
Plan.
wasn't like we
It
permitted
said
it.
something in.
No, you
if-
approved a
if
plan with
needed.
a plan date, that
Right.
plan date only did not have the
Right.
plus in it.
Right.
Right,
They didn't present the plus, they
Okay.
discussed it during, I believe, because now we're talking 2019,
Yeah.
and anything
Yeah.
pre-pandemic, I'm not being held accountable for. But I believe what they said was, they discussed that technology with you, they didn't feel they needed it.
Right.
They stuck with
I
the
think
original
you're right.
plan.
I think
That's
I
how I
recall
remember it,
that.
but now 2019 is a long time ago, so, I'd have to do some research.
So just leave it, I guess.
Yeah.
yeah. Just on page 4, so the bolded George line, ordered that there be a notification if that is the case, so the board will know there is no load going in at that point. So this is just that they need to notify us, but they're gonna know anyway, because, we want the test results for August 29th.
What is it, ordered that there be a notification if this is a case, if what is a case?
I would assume up above, in that if they had everything pumped off-site. The applicant should have the option of ending operations at the
Oh,
entire
okay.
facility or pumping off-site. I'm assuming that's what it refers to, cause right in there.
Yeah, that's what I was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, There's something about, though, I think the,
I know labs, they don't have an immediate turnaround in the laboratory.
I know, and nobody's on time for anything these days, unfortunately.
We have, our lab is 10 business days.
Yeah.
You can do
Get
a
a
fast.
holiday in there and
Yeah,
really stretches out,
right.
yeah. So, are you still,
I thought I was, but I think everything seems now to make sense.
okay,
And, you know, and there was a question, so then, are we on page 5?
that's
Is
what
there
I'm looking
anything
at.
on that one? Monicus?
I thought we should have a statement in there that the board had indicated a preference to very regulated distance to a lot line rather than to a well. That was the whole reason we.
Right.
Right?
Right.
There
We
was
had-
that. You said the board is much more open to.
Yeah,
Right.
that seems to be missing
Variance
as
to a
part of the
lot
dialogue.
line versus the drinking well.
Is that the 84 Municus verse?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, how should I change the sentence?
So I
You
think.
can just add one.
You can just add right after the plan dated 7/8/02, the board is more, how do we word it, more in
The
favor of?
board indicated a preference to
Preference.
very regulated distance to
To the
the lot
property
lot
line.
line versus the drinking well. Drinking well.
Yeah. That's all I have.
Yeah. I think we're good.
If those changes, I'll motion to approve the minutes of August 1st, 2022.
Second.
Scott, that line about town council has been contacted, and Mr. McGann has sent an email. There was a discussion among board members to vote the bylaw off the table and give the board authorization to develop and construct a regulation. That's in the last meeting
Yeah, I didn't know
minutes.
it, yeah.
Okay, so that's where we are with that one, right?
Yeah,
So-
I put a double asterisk on it, so I'm only when I need this.
There you go. So there was a motion and there was a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the
Aye.
minutes of 8/1? Aye.
Aye.
And is there anything further? We have nothing left on our agenda.
Rafferty rule.
Motion to
Rafferty
adjourn.
rule.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.